its mortuaries in the city of Johannesburg following the deadly collapse. 4 of the workers were South Africans, another 4 Lesotho nationals, and 1 Mozambican. The department says it cannot confirm whether the foreign nationals were documented or not. But City of Johannesburg says there were no working permits for the foreign nationals. The Gauteng Department of Health, Labour and Provincial Police have refused to reveal whether the said people were in the country legally. The Gauteng government referred EWN to the Ministry of Home Affairs, which has not yet answered any of our questions. The construction company New Order has also not responded to questions about the legality of its workers. Jabuli Lembata, Eyewitness News.
The son of late former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe is set to appear in the Alexandra Magistrates Court this morning, where he is expected to bring a formal bail application. The case was postponed last week because there was no electricity at the court precinct. Balamin Mugabe and Tobias Mugabe Matonze are accused of shooting and injuring an employee in their Hyde Park home last month. Dimakatso Leshoro has more.
The case was postponed twice last week after the Alexandra court precinct was left with no power or working generator for a week. Balamin Mugabe and Tobias Mugabe Matonze face 7 charges, including attempted murder, possession of a firearm, ammunition, defeating the ends of justice, contravening the Immigration Act, theft and pointing a firearm. It's not clear yet if police have found the gun used in the alleged shooting. The state is expected to confirm the pair's immigration status in South Africa following a charge of contravening the Immigration Act. If they are found to be illegal in the country, this could bolster the state's case to oppose bail. Last week, Mugabe's lawyer, Sinenhlanhla Mnguni, said his side was ready to deal with the bail hearing. The condition of the employee has been kept under wraps so far. Dimakatso Leshoro, Eyewitness News.
The lawyer representing a Bulgarian man wanted by Interpol says he's confident his client will be released on bail in Cape Town. Stanislav Stamenov was arrested in the metro last month on an Interpol red notice. In 2009, a Romanian court sentenced him in absentia to 16 years in prison for drug trafficking. He appeared in the Wynberg Magistrates Court yesterday, where the matter was postponed to next Wednesday for a formal bail application. Ntutu Zelonene reports.
Stanislav Stamenov's bid to secure his release was dismissed by the Wynberg Magistrates Court yesterday. His lawyer, William Booth, had argued that his client's arrest on an Interpol red notice was unlawful. However, Booth says he remains confident about Stamenov's chances when the bail application is heard next week.
But I don't want to predict what the magistrate is going to find, but having done a few bail applications before, I know what the requirements are, and I feel he fits fairly and squarely into the requirements that a court should look at for the release of a person.
The state has indicated that it will oppose bail. Ntutu Zelonene, Eyewitness News.
Gold is trading at $5,198.63 an ounce. The rand is at 16.25 to the dollar, 21.86 to the pound, 18.91 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $87.24 a barrel.
And in the traffic, we've got delays on the M1 South. This is between Marlborough Drive and Corlett Drive. That's due to peak time delays, as well as an accident on the opposite side of the road due to onlookers there. Please be on the lookout while traveling on the N3 North. We still have got queuing traffic between the Airlines Turn Off and Van Buren Road.
A fine day in store for Gauteng. The temperatures will peak at highs between 25 and 26 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour: the ad hoc committee investigating police corruption in Parliament will today hear testimony from Francina Vuma, who was suspended by the police in 2022.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
You're with Clement Manyathela
On 702.
Let's Walk the Talk, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856.
92.7 and 106 FM.
8 minutes after 9 o'clock. Dumelang. Welcome to the Clement Manyathela Show on this 11th day of March. It's great to have you with us here on 702. I hope you are well this morning. We start the show with the 702 open line on 011-883-0702. You can send your WhatsApps as well on 072-702-1702. Hello, if you're watching us on YouTube, you're welcome to put your comments there as well on our YouTube if you're watching and listening to the show at the same time. If you want to do that, it's very easy. Just go to the 702 YouTube page. So, here's a question. Should the U.S. ambassador to South Africa, Leo Bozell III, be expelled and declared persona non grata? That's what the EFF is calling for. I mean, this man has literally just arrived in the country and he has already rattled feathers. This is what he said at the Biz News 2026 conference, which has several parties and politicians hot under the collar.
The United States is I should look at it this way too. We're running out of patience. We believe that more and more it becomes a statement by the South African government when it doesn't want to respond to simple questions that we have. We may not get clarity on the kill the board chant that we believe is hate speech. I'm sorry, I don't care what your courts say. It's hate speech. We believe that there is clarity on the expropriation. We believe we can find these things. But the South African government has to step up to the plate. At this point, what I'm saying to the business community, you do too. What I don't have patience for, and I'll be very blunt here. I'm known for being blunt. This is why the president asked me to do this. But I don't want to hear businesses say one thing publicly and another thing privately.
So, here are a few things that I have issues with. And let me tell you what I think, and I would like to hear if you agree and what your thoughts are. First of all, let me preface this in the interest of transparency by saying that I had an off-record meeting with this ambassador about a week or so ago, and it was off-record, so I can't necessarily share what we discussed, but he's going to be coming on the show soon. We're still aligning our diaries, and you will hear from him what his views are, and we'll ask him the questions that need to be asked. But to be honest, the meeting with him was quite frank. I mean, he struck me as someone who listens, who is interested to hear other people's viewpoints, as much as he may disagree with them. He's willing to be criticized himself or have his government criticized, the government he represents. So, all in all, it was a frank meeting, agreed to disagree on a few things. But as I said, he will come on the show soon to articulate what his mandate is here in South Africa and what is he unhappy about as an ambassador of the U.S. Now, I have a few things that I take issue with what he said. Number one, you don't come to our country and tell us that you don't care what our courts say. In this country, we have 3 arms of the state. The judiciary is one of the arms of the state, and we respect the judiciary in this country. So I find his comment that he doesn't care what the courts say about the Dubuli Bunu song arrogant. I find it to be disrespectful to our institutions. Does that mean that he can't disagree with our courts? No, it doesn't mean that. In fact, he can say that he holds a different view to what our courts have ruled around the song. But you cannot say to your hosts, you don't care what their courts say. I think this conduct is undiplomatic, but I don't think he should be expelled for that. I don't think his conduct crosses the threshold of insulting the country or the head of state. And that's why I disagree with the EFF that he should be expelled and declared persona non grata. Maybe a démarche will be issued by our government for him to come and explain what he meant by his comments, but I don't think this warrants an expulsion. What do you think? Number two, during his address, he referred to this, and I'll call it a mutually beneficial relationship, because it is. The mutually beneficial relationship our country has with the US-based companies, like whether it's Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and others. I mean, there are just over 500 US companies that operate in this country. And it seems like he's using them as leverage. Yes, these companies, undoubtedly, they contribute to employment in our country. They conversely extract profit from our economy. In fact, the EFF put it so well in their statement that any suggestion that their commercial presence in South Africa is a sign of goodwill and commercial diplomacy by the US is actually quite wild. It is. And it's puzzling that he wants to suggest that the private sector of the United States and the companies that are operating in South Africa represent a measure of some political goodwill, which somehow can be withdrawn at some point if there's dissatisfaction from the Americans. And in fact, the EFF in their statement this morning say they highly doubt that these companies perceive their investment in South Africa as an extension of President Donald Trump's political ambitions. So they doubt that the companies would appreciate actually being used as leverage in diplomatic relations. So do you think this warrants for him to be declared persona non grata? I don't think so. Do you think this warrants for his expulsion? I don't think so. And I have had conversations with a few people in government who also don't really think that it is that extreme. But I think the consensus is there. These comments were undiplomatic. They are undiplomatic. You come to a host, your host country, and you want to tell the host country you don't care about their independent institutions and what they say? That is wild. Maybe in America, that's how things work. Maybe you don't care about what the courts say in America. Not here. In this country, these are independent institutions, and we respect them as one of the final lines of defense in our society. Let me know your thoughts on 011-883-0702. The WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702. At 10 o'clock, we're going to start something new on the show today. It's going to be our monthly feature, just like we have like the Healing Hour. We're calling it Exploring Spirituality with Vusumzi Ngande. Vusumzi is the author of Jenny Kwantu, Exploring African Spirituality and Identity. I read the book last year. I told you about it. It's so insightful. It's not just an academic exploration because it's rooted in extensive historical research, but it's also very personal. It's very practical, and that's what I enjoyed about it. And we've had him on the show last year, and a lot of you were impressed by him and his knowledge. You appreciated what he shared with us, and you asked us to bring him back. So we've decided to actually start a completely new feature with him to explore spirituality with him. And today we're going to start by looking at religion in a changing world. I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation at 10 o'clock. You don't want to miss it. At 11 o'clock, we're going to do our Listener's Choice feature. And one of our listeners has asked us to discuss how much prisoners cost the state. So how much of your tax goes towards the upkeep of our prisoners? That's the conversation on our Listener's Choice feature. And then at 11:30, we do the sharing space. Today, we're going to hear an interesting story of someone who is raising some concerns about his colleagues who have been speaking in a language he doesn't understand, especially even during gatherings at work or social gatherings after work, maybe when they're having drinks or playing golf. And I know that this is something that some of you experience, especially in the workplace, and I'd like to know how you navigate that. We'll hear his story on our sharing space at 11:30. That's the show coming up over the next 3 hours.
Clement Manyathela, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856,
92.7
and 106 FM.
Clement and the team. For me, I find that the ambassador from America to South Africa to be a bit like if you come into a host country, especially now that this was his first public speaking, you can't announce yourself in that way. And it seems like he is like talking down to us. And also, like, you can now say that they don't agree with what the courts have said about Dibulaibun. So that for me, it's like, you can't come to a host country and then speak down on the people and still disrespect our part of our state and then say that we need to do this, do that, do that. So I just feel like it's not how you announce yourself to the country of your host nation. So yeah.
Clement, this guy says all these things while he's in South African soil. And this is the opportunity for us to show America, because we've been claiming that we're not going to be bullied. This is one perfect example to make an example out of him. EFF is right. We need to chase this guy away from us. He's coming here. He's starting to say things like this. Who knows what is he going to do next? The damage that is going to inflict on South Africans. Somebody might argue that no, he's spoken into a different platform. The person who was chased away from America, our ambassador, also said things in a platform that is different from the government, but he was chased out. We need to make an example of this guy. He's disrespecting us all, disrespecting our courts and laws, says he doesn't care what the court says. And if we don't take a stand with this one, South Africa will be regarded as weak.
Hey, Clement and 702 lenders. It is very, very unfortunate that a person of such high caliber as the ambassador of the United States of America would undermine our constitution and justice system so bluntly. It's a symbol of bullyism. It's a symbol of disrespect. And all I can say is it is very unfortunate. I understand that he has reservations of his own about his own comments, but to go to a country and say you don't care what your court says, it for me, really, it's a symbol of bullyism and a lot of disrespect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he has to apologize for that. That's why I'm hoping that our government can issue a démarche. He must go there and explain himself. You don't come here and disrespect this country like that. You can have a different view. There's nothing wrong with you saying, I actually think our view is that we disagree with what the courts have found. That's fine. We all disagree with some judgments. But fundamentally, we respect the decision of the courts. And if you are unhappy about it, you've got opportunities to appeal to higher courts. If it must get to the Constitutional Court, let it be. But in this country, the judiciary is an arm of the state that is respected. And you cannot come and be so undiplomatic and arrogant in your approach, as if we're some little kids here who are colonized. Doesn't work like that. And I hope that he's going to apologize for it. As I said, I really don't think that we've put up a strong case for him to be expelled, which is a bit extreme. And I don't think our government even has the gumption for it, because you know how the Trump administration would react, right? I mean, if you expelled this ambassador now or you declared him persona non grata, President Trump is going to get up on Truth Social and tweet and say, cut all ties with South Africa. That's a possibility. We've seen it with Spain, when Spain didn't want to join the war in Iran. Cut off all trade with Spain. So we're not dealing here with an administration that is willing to sit down and have a conversation. So our government has to factor that in. But either way, I still don't think that this crosses that threshold of like insulting a government and the leader of the government. But I find it quite undiplomatic. I find it quite arrogant. And did you see where he was speaking at this Biz News conference? Go check the profile of the people who were there. They were busy clapping, nodding. These are citizens of this country. They have no shame even when a person who's a guest makes such disparaging remarks about independent institutions in this country, they're clapping and yapping and nodding. Shame on them. Masungulo, you're calling us from Protea Glen. Good morning.
Morning, Clem. How are you?
Good, brother. Go ahead.
I'm alright, man. Listen, straightforward. You can't come to somebody's country and speak the way that you speak. It's your first time here, and the first thing you do is disrespect our judicial system.
Yeah.
I don't know if it goes back to how things operate in America, where it's this whole thing of sensationalism when it comes to such things. But then, when you come to somebody's country, you should at least come there with some sort of respect, even though you don't agree with what is being said. There are certain ways of doing it or saying it so that you don't offend the people in the country or even the judicial system itself. And it goes back to what you were saying, Clement. Look at who their president is. You know, maybe this is allowed, that side. And even if we do stand up to them, what's going to happen now? That's another thing that we also need to factor in this whole equation, that maybe where they come from, this is allowed.
Not here.
You know,
this is not where they come from.
You can't be. That's why I started with. Yeah,
we're not a colonized country anymore. We're not. We're an independent, sovereign state. We've got our own independent institutions. And we respect those institutions. I mean, the conduct of ambassadors is actually governed by the Vienna Convention. There are expectations that convention have in as far as the behavior of ambassadors is concerned. In fact, Abel, please find me a clip quickly of Ibrahim Rasool. I spoke to Ibrahim Rasool on my show on Face the Nation on the SABC about a month ago. And I asked him about the Vienna Convention, and his response was, of course, that's what should govern the behavior of all ambassadors across the board. But the United States ambassadors have their own rules. I'll find that clip for you and play it for you. But it cannot be. It cannot be. You've got it, Abel? So quick. Okay, let's take a listen to what Ibrahim Rasool said. This was a month ago on Face the Nation on the SABC.
United States ambassadors globally are a breed on their own. They believe that they represent a superpower who has the ability to punish economically, even militarily, that they believe that in many countries, particularly in the Middle East, no government makes a decision without consulting the U.S. ambassador. That's the power that they have that other ambassadors ordinarily do not have. And so I think the one thing that President Ramaphosa has done that he may hope would rein in Lee Bozell when he hits the ground is the fact that he fired a warning shot through the expulsion of the chargé d'affaires of Israel, and to declare him persona non grata, and therefore he may think that a warning has been given, step out of line, and the same could happen to you. Whether it will be as easy with the U.S. ambassador is another matter altogether, but the hope is that could bracket Lee Bozell in the way in which he conducts himself. The question is, if there's the first infraction, if he becomes the kind of lightning rod for a revival of white supremacism in South Africa, and the president blinks and does not expel him, then I think we will be fair game.
That's what Ibrahim Rasool, the former U.S. ambassador to South Africa, told me about a month ago when I had him on my show on the SABC. Tabuko, you're calling us from Vanderbijl Park. What are your thoughts?
Clement, the man was hosted in Western Cape, and I think Alec Hawke said something of this nature. You can say we in the Western Cape
we don't agree with the policies of the ANC or the GNU or something of that sort, of that nature. However, the man has been very vocal, even before he was admitted, even before he gave his credentials to our ambassadorship in South Africa, my brother. He was very, very vocal about how he stands about the BEE, what these racial laws are about. I understand that you're saying he's a man that listens, and I don't think that he came here to listen to us. He came here on a Trump card. He can say whatever Mr. Trump says, I will go and make sure that it happens. Because all the things that he said there, he was supposed to be called out by the host himself and asked relevant questions, but they were clapping and agreeing with him. And I can tell you now, my brother, South Africa needs to show that we are not being bullied. Yes, don't dispel him as yet, but yes, like you said, call him to order before he can go far. Because now, if we don't call him to order, my brother, he's gonna put this propaganda towards Mr. Trump, and anything can happen. He can.
True. And we were able to call to order his predecessor. Remember Ambassador Bridget to you when he lied and said.
He lied about the ship that landed here.
And said we gave Russia arms to go fight in Ukraine. Well, I say lied because our government's investigation found that there was nothing like that. So they called him. And Naledi Pandor at the time was the Minister of International Relations, and there was a démarche that was issued, and he had to explain himself. And I hope this ambassador can also be treated the same way. Look, guys, let's be clear. Of course, an ambassador of the U.S. in this country or anywhere around the world is going to represent the interests of the United States. I get that. And you and I may not like that. You and I may not like the fact that he thinks BEE doesn't work. But that is really the position of the United States, and he represents that. But your attitude towards this country that is hosting you better be in line with the Vienna Convention. And one of the articles of that convention, in fact, the legal and ethical conduct, Article 41 and 42, speaks about respect and non-interference. You have a duty as an ambassador to respect local laws and avoid interfering in the internal affairs of the host country. And if you are not adhering to that, you've got to be called out. And our government cannot be so scared to even call this man out for making such remarks about our courts because they fear the wrath of the U.S. President Donald Trump. Then we're not a sovereign state. It's 9:30. Swisso, good morning.
Thanks, Clements. Good morning. The ad hoc committee investigating police corruption will today hear testimony from Francina Vuma, who was suspended by the police in 2022. Vuma served as the Deputy National Commissioner for Support Services and later Asset and Legal Management before her retirement in January. She is expected to give evidence related to her suspension for procurement-related irregularities. Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure Dean McPherson says investors have responded positively to the launch of the new South African National Property Company. McPherson says the state entity will manage government's property portfolio, which includes 88,000 buildings and 5 million hectares of public land. President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the establishment of the firm during his State of the Nation address. And Iranian President Youssef Pezeshkian says the country's new supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei is safe and sound despite reports of an injury. The New York Times reported earlier that Khamenei, who recently succeeded his father, was wounded in an Israeli strike at the start of the attacks. The publication says Mojtaba Khamenei is alert, safe and sheltering at a highly secure location with limited communication. Those are the headlines. This EWN and more at 10 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
Travelling on the M1 South, we've got an accident reported right near Glenhove Road. It's causing heavy delays coming out of Greyston Drive. Please be on the lookout there and expect about a 20-minute hold-up. There's also queuing traffic in Boksburg along the N17 east heading towards Rondebold Road. Roadworks are causing delays there. There's also roadworks along the N3 North right near Van Buren Road. Delays from the Eland interchange while travelling on the Mike 1 North. We still have got some issues. This is between Boyson's Road towards the Crown interchange in the city of finding queuing traffic on the N14 North. This is between the Littleton Road exit and Euphus Road. Please be on the lookout there. More updates coming up. Stay tuned.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Africa Milani.
Weekday mornings,
4 to 6.
We know how important the U.S. is to South Africa. How important is South Africa to the U.S.?
It's important enough that you send somebody who has of the president when and if it's necessary. South Africa once again becomes a major transit point for much international commerce. And it's important because South Africa has been one of the few countries in the world to be visibly supportive of Iran.
Brooks Spector, U.S. policy expert, reflecting on the first public address by the U.S. ambassador to South Africa.
Africa Milani.
4 to 6 on 702.
On Friday, the 13th of March, the Grateful Hearts Foundation invites you to celebrate motherhood, love and legacy at Pelo. A Mother's Love, a powerful evening of art, food and wine in Rosebank. Hosted at Aspire Art in the Atrium at Keys Art Mile. Experience works by Sem Mhlengetwa, Zizi Popo, Swa, Boemo Diale and more. Enjoy a harvest table by Lady Day, fine wine and an intimate artist panel. All proceeds support pediatric cardiac care through Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital. Get your tickets today on Howler.
Stand a chance to win a share of a red-hot 3 million rand with the Hollywood Bet Spinner Zonke jackpot race. Enter the chase and enjoy a feast of fun where every spin could unlock riveting rewards. To start your adventure, bet 2 rand or more on selected habanero games every Wednesday, Friday and Saturday between 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. The racing revolution starts now. Dive in and prepare to take top spot.
T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counseling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp help to 076 675 0710.
When it comes to protecting your workforce, trust the workwear brand that has been protecting workers for over 150 years. Sweetall. Sweetall has overalls and uniform solutions for every industry, so your team is safe, comfortable, and ready to tackle any challenge. Visit our Boksburg showroom, shop A1 Atlas Road, Westwood, Boksburg, or go to sweetall.com today. Sweetall, we never let you down. Superior protective workwear since 1871.
Your voice.
Your station.
Your open line.
Walk the talk with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
25 minutes before 10 o'clock. Straight to your calls on 011-883-0702. We're getting your thoughts on the calls for Leo Bozell to be declared persona non grata and be expelled. That's what the EFF is calling for because he was speaking at a conference, was it yesterday? Yeah, in the Western Cape. And he said he doesn't care what the courts in this country say. And he was giving his thoughts about the Dubula Ibunu song, which the court said is free speech. And of course, other people disagree with what the court has decided. And yet, they still respect that it's a decision of the courts. And here's a man that we are hosting in this country who comes and speaks to us like we are some little kids, as if he is here in a country that's colonized by his country and speaks to us in such a disparaging tone. That is unacceptable. It's undiplomatic. It's arrogant. But does it warrant an expulsion? I'm not sure. Maybe a démarche. As someone indicated to me on Twitter, it's not démarche, it's French, so it's démarche. What do you think? Let's go to Mudiehe. You're calling us from Rua de Port. What are your thoughts? Hi.
Hi, Clement. Clement, I'm thinking that these men, they are inciting a war between blacks and whites in South Africa. Because regardless of what our country did last year, going to America, to go and sit with Trump and explain everything that is happening, they still rubbing this thing in our faces. It looks like these people are determined to do something. They just they knew that when raising this thing in that conference, the people who will be there, obviously they have financial muscles. And when they come back, they will be remembering that kill the Boer thing. So, and then they know that with blacks, this if they say it, then blacks might be like, okay, we were not meaning it in that way, but the whites will be like, but you are still saying it. So they just want to revive something that has been decided long ago by our courts and so I'm thinking that they really are doing this intentionally so that they can, you know what, they can highlight that line between black and white and say, you guys are not united as you think you are, so that in the end, at the end, they, America, will come in and say we have reunited them. So they want to win the peace, Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, they wouldn't be different from Bell Pottinger then if that's what they do. Because how do you come and want to stoke racial tensions in a country that has a history of racial tensions? We are very sensitive about that in this country because we've been there and we don't want to go back there. And we have not gone back there. Simon, you're calling us from Woodmead. What do you think?
Hi, Clement. Great show. Look, his first engagement and the tone of voice as a diplomat is totally unacceptable. If you hear him carefully, he said twice that we are running out of, or I'm running out of the patient. I mean, what type of the tone of voice it is? We running out of the patient. Are you a school teacher? Are you think that we are really a third world country? Or you in such authority that you can run out of the patient of what? I mean, if we don't succumb to your demands or your misguided U.S. policies, then we will be the next Iran. I mean, he need to be put into his place in the first public statement. I think the media need to take him to the task, and I'm sure the Dimasha will be suitable for him.
Yeah.
You don't come to the country and tell the country you run down and by saying your court, I have no respect. And secondly is we running out of the patient. By which standard you running out of the patient? We are not a school kids that you can come and talk to us in this tone. You are not here to play diplomacy. You are here to dictate your misguided policy, U.S. policies. And unfortunately, we don't have the place for such people like that. And I think he will create more problem than to pave the way for a mutual beneficial relationship between USA as we used to enjoy before.
That's true. Simon couldn't have said it better. Environmentalist on Twitter says, Clement, there's nothing one can say to justify his below utterances. He said, we are running out of patience. That's a threat. He said, I don't care what the SA court says. That's an insult. If the roles were reversed, what would Trump do? No, we are done cowering before the U.S., Trump and his ilk. Can you imagine if this was our ambassador in the U.S. who said these words? What do you think would be the approach of the United States? Let's go to your WhatsApps. Nandi Lerato AB Semi, I see you. I'll come to you in a moment.
Good morning, Clement. I think that guy must go. From the onset, he was not supposed to be admitted in South Africa. I think he must go. It's for the best of South Africa that he gets out of the country and they bring in somebody else. He has no good intentions for South Africa at all. So I think he must vacate. He must vacate.
Morning 702 Lenders, Clement, we're going to have a problem going forward with this ambassador. He just came now and is already running his mouth wild. He's running his mouth wild. Telling us he doesn't care. Whoever say what. Doesn't care about our justice system or whatever. We're going to have a problem going forward with this guy. I'm telling you. He's going to run his mouth open. Why? I think it's time to just nip his mouth now before it get out of control. So I think we must just deal with him now before it gets out of control. Mwagwe and Joburg, have a great one.
Morning, Clement. You just took the words out of my mouth. You can't go to any country and say, I don't care what the court says. Because the courts, their job is to uphold the rule of law and the constitution. Same goes for you as a South African. You can't now go to the US and say you don't care what the Supreme Court of the US says.
Imagine.
I think that, Clement, is a big blunder.
But you know what? I'm glad that a lot of you who are citizens of this country, as much as you may disagree with our foreign policy or our government, you actually have the decency and the interest to keep our dignity enough to see that this is wild and unacceptable, which means government officials that are listening must know that this is how South Africans feel. And they must be forced to draw the line and call this man to account. Because maybe they're scared, but they work for you and I. So you and I, when we express our opinions like that and say, this is unacceptable, I know they listen to these shows. And I think that is going to help put pressure on them, because we're not going to be disrespected like that. It's not going to happen. Lerato, you're in Cape Town. Hi.
Hi, Clement. How are you?
Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you, Clement. I think for me, never mind what the ambassador said, but South African citizens were in that audience and they were lifting that up. I think for me that speaks a lot of volume in terms of where we are as a country and why we continue to be here. We can blame the ANC for all its failures and especially around transformation, but the biggest beneficiaries of transformation were in that room cheering. So I think it says a lot about our issues and how divisive South Africa is. And I think that is one thing we are not talking about. And I think we should be addressing that. And the sponsors and whoever hosted him, that platform, all of that, that speaks a lot of volume that citizens, South African citizens in this country that are clapping to such things.
Yeah, true, Lerato. It took place there in your town, in Cape Town.
well.
I'm joking.
Let's
Let's not even go there. But I'm joking. It was in Hermanus, which is why I said earlier, shame on the citizens of this country who were sitting there and they were nodding and clapping as this man disrespected our institutions like that. Shame on them. Semi, you are in Centurion. Hi.
Clement.
Sure.
You know, that's why someone's background is so important. This guy, he was the biggest supporter of the apartheid government. He was opposed to the sanctions against the apartheid government. He labeled anti-apartheid organizations as terrorist organizations. This guy's got a history. He's a MAGA warrior, right? Donald Trump chose him on purpose. He knew what sort of a position he holds. So I'm shocked that people are so outraged. His information, this background is all over the place. So I don't understand why people are so outraged about what he said. This is who he is. He's worse than Donald Trump.
Really?
If I were to put it that, you can go and read about him. If you think Donald Trump is a racist, if you think that Donald Trump is a misogynist, if you think that Donald Trump is this, that, and the other, then you don't know anything.
Yeah, so Semi, as I said, that's not a sense I got, and maybe I was mistaken. When I met with him off record, that's not a sense I got. I found a man who was rational, who was willing to listen, who was willing to take the points I said, which disagreed fundamentally with the position of the U.S., but who was also willing to put his thoughts across. But as I said, we're going to have him on the show soon. And when he comes, I want you guys to engage with him. I mean, I've got some really important questions, at least I think I have, that I would like to ask him on the record. And I'm sure you've got many questions yourself. So when he comes here, we'll take that opportunity to respectfully engage with him in a frank conversation. AB, you are in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. You know, it's all a matter of respect. This ambassador is part of the white supremacist regime in the White House that respects nothing. No respect for international law, no respect for the sovereignty of a country. Greenland is an example of that. That's at the root of the problem, no respect. What do you expect from the regime that protects pedophiles? We are sick and tired of the world's biggest bully. And the white supremacists here that applauded this ambassador should pack up and join the refugees who Trump welcomed.
IB in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you so much. Let's go to Nandi in Pimville, Soweto. Nandi, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Sharp, go ahead.
I'm good. I just think, why don't we use tit for tat? Because he threw out Rasul from his country. He said Rasul said nasty things about him and threw him out of his country. So why can't we throw him out?
Because if we do that, Nandi, then the president of the U.S. may just cut all trade ties with us, may just make that unilateral emotional decision in a whim. That's what we're dealing with. And I don't think we need to find ourselves in that situation, because we are going to feel the pinch of that. So I think we must be the bigger guys in the room and try be more rational, because we know what the consequences would be for us as a country. I'm not saying look the other way and give the other cheek. I'm just saying there are other ways you can diplomatically deal with this, because if you don't deal with it diplomatically, then the U.S. is going to respond in a very harsh way that may end up really messing us up.
Julius is correct. Then Uguti, we are scared of this guy. We are scared. We are afraid of him. We're afraid of what he's going to do. Therefore, he can walk all over us as much as he wants, and there's no repercussions. I mean, your impression of the ambassador, to me, says he showed you exactly what you wanted to see.
Maybe.
As in this nice guy, this nice guy. But back at the ranch, as the previous caller stated, we know exactly who he is. He's a racist, a misogynist, and pure evil. And to make it worse, the people that were in the room are even worse than him.
Yeah, I feel like they've betrayed. I mean, where's patriotism, guys? Because, by the way, we're not saying that people must, just disagree with the ambassador even when it's unnecessary. I'm just saying that no matter how much I hate the ANC or the GNU or the DA or whatever party, if there's a guest of this country who speaks so disparagingly about institutions of my country, I really would take offense. I would take offense. And here we are. We had people sitting in there nodding. I don't know what the host said. I don't know if the host called him out on that. I didn't pick that up. But that is so disappointing. To sit there and nod and clap to a man who is showing a middle finger to institutions that we respect in this country, and you are nodding and just clapping and going along. That's wild. 072-702-1702 for your WhatsApps.
Hi, Clement. This is Sidola Tsusumane. Clement, my view is that Bozell's comments are condescending, but to outrightly declare him a persona non grata would further push our problems deep into, I don't know how to explain this, because already we are in trouble with the U.S. Thank you.
Hi, Clement. I think South Africa just has to ignore this guy, because I can see he's trying to provoke people here that will respond, so that America has his way, comes here and they say more. So I think let's just ignore this guy and let him swallow his own words.
Good day, Clement. Clement, I agree with the EFF. We should declare this gentleman a persona non grata based on the fact that he's undermining the arms of state, when not Clement. And in so doing, he's also speaking in a condescending tone to say something must be done. And it's as if we don't have sound minds or legal minds that looked into this matter and actually deliberated, took their time, when not Clement, to actually consider every fact that was presented before the courts. And now he just arrives here and speaks in a fashion that seeks to look down on our constitution and the legal system that we have in our country. Clement, if we keep him, we'll be inviting problems. Just like the gentleman that said that we have weapons, we are supplying weapons to Russia and all of that.
I think we can look on the bright side of this somehow, maybe. That Trump won't always be there, and things will hopefully return to normal. I mean, he's on his way out. I don't think he'll live long enough to see the end of his term. His dementia and other things, he's not a well man, and he won't win the midterms. He's going to lose badly. The problem is he knows he's going to lose, and he'll probably do everything in his power to try find a way to get the elections cancelled. That's just the kind of madman he is. I mean, so the whole world is just going to ride this guy out and just hope he doesn't cause too much more damage. Gary.
I've been saying this all along regarding this issue of the ambassador of America. It shows and it's clear South Africa is not a sovereign state. This idea of saying South Africa is a sovereign state is just a fallacy. It's not a sovereign state.
Solly, you calling us from Leondale. Good morning. Hi, Solly.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Sharp. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Oh, man, two things quickly. The first one, I agree with you that we need to tread carefully. We need to be diplomatic in terms of how we deal with this. If the Americans retaliate, Julius won't to support Julius, won't do nothing. For an example, I know that it won't go to that extreme, but I'm just making an example. If he drops the bomb here in South Africa, the callers who are in support of Julius and Julius himself, they won't do nothing.
They'll take up arms, Solly. They'll defend this country.
So we just need to be diplomatic in terms of how we deal with this. But the second one, quickly, Clement, we don't need to be blinded to the fact that we have got two types of citizens in this country. You've got the citizens who owe their allegiance and who are patriotic to this country, and then you've got also the citizens who came, we know our history, who came and sought settlement in this country. And then you must not think that when such statements are made, and then they will become outraged. That is why you are saying that in Cape Town, they clap or they know that. And those who did that, I can tell you with my eyes closed because I did not see that. Their skin color, it is different to the skin color of the callers this morning. So that it is telling that our loyalty and our patriotism, it is not the same. That is why others, when they've got their issues, they fly to America to report the matter to their brother, and their brother is acting on their behalf.
Solly in Leondale, thank you for your thoughts. Ndodogazi on Twitter says, Clement, one thing that shocked me the most was the othering of the Western Cape or Cape Town. They said, we are not like that here, quote unquote. What did they mean? Biz News must tell us how they are in the Western Cape and they are not part of South Africa or don't follow the same policies. So yeah, there was that othering of the Western Cape as if it is not part of South Africa. More of your WhatsApps on 0727021702.
This man has come here with a mandate. So every single word that comes out of his mouth is planned, it's decided, he knows exactly what he's going to say before he says it. It's not an accident that he says that he said what he said. He wasn't coming here to sensationalize anything. America has got a history of causing some or other form of economic sabotage by causing social disruption. So we need to pay attention. This man needs to go. Leanne, PE.
On YouTube, Samuel says, Clement, the nerve of this guy. Well, he comes from a country where law or international law doesn't matter. Another one on YouTube, Nice, says, hi, Clement. Let's remember where the Kill the Boer song comes from. It's a struggle song that was sung by our people during a time of oppression. It is part of our history and DNA. And look, guys, you and I as South Africans can have a conversation about whether or not that song is still appropriate today and whether we must take into account the historical context. That's a conversation we can have, and I think it's a separate one. We are dealing now with a man who has just shown the middle finger and pure disrespect to the judiciary, our independent institutions. And I think it's even worse hearing that comment from someone who is being hosted in this country. Someone whom the Vienna Convention, that's supposed to govern the behavior of ambassadors, requires a completely different behavior to what he demonstrated at that conference. On YouTube, Glenn Specker says, Clement, let's send him back to the US, give supporting evidence why, and live with our reality of being disliked by the US. I'll wrap up with Leanne on YouTube, who says, Clement, letting this man stay here is a big mistake. We've got a snake in the dining room, and we are expecting it to be a normal dinner guest. It's 2 minutes before 10.
Part of the 702 family.
My name is Iwet Machinyathimbi. I like this station I've listened over the years since its inception. 702 is the best. There's no other radio station that can beat 702. Hala, 702.
Welcome to our 702 family. Let's walk the talk.
Celebrate the power of African storytelling. Join Freedom Park in collaboration with the South African State Theatre for the 13th Ungasali Storytelling Festival on the 14th of March 2026 at the South African State Theatre in Pretoria. Experience powerful performances through poetry, theatre, music, and traditional storytelling as we celebrate the voices and stories that shape our heritage. Tickets are available at Web Tickets for 150 Rand. The Ungasali Storytelling Festival, where African stories come alive. Don't miss it.
Let's hear from Al, owner of Johnson's Cable, why it pays to switch to Outsurance Business Insurance.
I thought it was going to be difficult to switch to Outsurance Business Insurance. Switching was so quick and easy. I'm happy with the premium that I'm paying now.
For electrical, tradesman services, and all other businesses, get a quote today and see why it pays to switch to Outsurance Business Insurance. Visit outsurance.co.za or call 08600 60,000 today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
Turn leadership into action. Join the CEO Wheelchair Campaign with the Little Eden Society and spend a day in a wheelchair, experiencing the realities thousands face every day. Raise funds, build empathy, help provide lifelong care and dignity to those who cannot care for themselves. Ride a mile in our wheels. Visit littleeden.org or call 011 609 7246. Lead with heart, change lives, and create hope for families across South Africa.
This is EWN.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. The son of former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe has abandoned his bail application in the Alexandra Magistrates Court. Bellarmine Mugabe and his co-accused Tobias Matonze appeared in the dock this morning, where their legal team indicated that it wants to proceed to a plea agreement. The case has now been postponed to next Tuesday for plea negotiations. Mugabe and Matonze are accused of shooting and injuring an employee at their Hyde Park home last month. They face 7 charges, including attempted murder, possession of a firearm and ammunition, defeating the ends of justice, contravening the Immigration Act, theft, and pointing a firearm. Suspended head of organised crime at SAPS, Richard Shibiri, has returned to the Madlanga Commission today for cross-examination on allegations he's in the pockets of crime cartel bosses. Shibiri first appeared before the commission last Wednesday, where he denied most of the allegations against him. Previous witnesses have accused him of trying to bribe police officers to make a murder case go away, leaking classified information to civilians, and accepting money from crime kingpins. Shibiri has denied all the allegations except for receiving a 70,000 Rand loan from suspected crime boss Vusmuzi Kat Matlala in 2024, which he says has since been repaid in full. In Parliament, the ad hoc committee investigating police corruption will today hear testimony from Francina Vuma, who was suspended by the police in 2022. Vuma served as the Deputy National Commissioner for Support Services and later Asset and Legal Management before her retirement in January. Vuma is expected to give evidence related to her suspension for procurement-related irregularities. Babalondenza reports.
Francina Vuma's testimony will focus mainly on her time as the Deputy National Commissioner and some of the transactions that took place under her watch. Vuma is also a key figure in high-profile investigations involving police corruption and misconduct. But Vuma was suspended in July 2022 for her alleged role in the cell phone grabber procurement for the ANC's Nasrec conference and other irregularities. During her labor dispute with the police, Vuma claimed her suspension was to get back at her for exposing corruption and sexual harassment involving former Minister Clement. During her suspension, the police later recommended that Vuma be retrenched following an organizational restructuring process that rendered her position redundant. Babalo Ndenze, Eyewitness News, Parliament.
Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure Dean McPherson says investors have responded positively to the launch of the new South African National Property Company. McPherson says the state entity will manage government's property portfolio, which includes 88,000 buildings and 5 million hectares of public land. President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the establishment of the firm during his State of the Nation address. Carlo Peterson reports.
Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure Dean McPherson says the South African National Property Company aims to cut 6 billion rand spent annually on private leases. The minister says key projects include the redevelopment of Youngsfield and Wingfield military bases into large mixed-use properties.
The big problem that we faced is all of these assets owned by the state where there was just no economic value being derived out of these assets.
McPherson says 12 small coastal harbours have been earmarked for maritime-driven economic hubs with a combined investment of more than 48 billion rand. Carlo Peterson, Eyewitness News.
And Iranian President Youssef Pezeshkian says the country's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, is safe and sound despite reports of an injury. The New York Times reported earlier that Khamenei, who recently succeeded his father, who was wounded in an Israeli strike at the start of the attacks. The publication says Mojtaba Khamenei is alert, safe and sheltering at a highly secure location with limited communication. The 56-year-old is a discreet figure who had or has hardly appeared in public or spoken at official events, and he's yet to address the nation or even issue a written statement since he was declared supreme leader on Sunday. Gold is trading at $5,177.92 an ounce. The rand is at 16.30 to the dollar, 21.91 to the pound, 18.95 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $87.64 a barrel.
And in the traffic, we've got heavy delays along the R24 East. This is between Barber Road and Isanda Road. Please be on the lookout there while traveling on the N12 as well as the R24 West. We've got bumper-to-bumper traffic. This is between Edenville Road and the Gilulis interchange.
A fine day in store for Gauteng. The temperatures will peak at highs between 25 and 26 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour: the son of former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe has abandoned his bail application in the Alexandra Magistrates Court.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
You're with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
Let's walk the talk. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856,
92.7 and 106 FM.
Seven minutes after 10 o'clock. Dumelang. Welcome to the second hour of the Clement Manyathela Show. Thank you for staying with us here on 702, and thank you for your contributions on the 702 open line this morning. I really, really appreciate your calls and contributions as always. Remember, at 11 o'clock, we are going to do our Listener's Choice feature, and one of our listeners has asked that we discuss how much prisoners cost the state. So how much of your tax as a taxpayer goes towards the upkeep of prisoners? Because every day in this country, thousands of people wake up behind bars. They are housed, they are fed, they are guarded, they are provided health care by the state. But have you ever wondered what that actually costs the taxpayer? Because I know some of you are unhappy about how much you pay as a taxpayer for the upkeep of the prisoners. Some of you have argued that these people have a better life in prison than many other South Africans who live below the poverty line, who are outside of prison. So we've got someone who's going to help us understand those costs and how they break them up. That's what's coming up on our Listener's Choice feature at 11 o'clock.
You're with Clement Manyathela.
702.
But right now, we start something new on the show, a new monthly feature. We are going to call it Exploring Spirituality with Vusumzi Nxande. Vusumzi is the author of Jenny Kwantu, Exploring African Spirituality and Identity. I've read his book. I've listened to his podcasts. I mean, he is really insightful. I mean, the book, and some of you have asked the name. I've posted it on my socials as well. It's not just an academic exploration, because it's rooted in extensive historical research, but it's also quite personal. It's very practical, which is what I've enjoyed about the book. And we had him on the show last year, and a lot of you appreciated what he shared with us, and you asked that we bring him back. And so we decided that actually we're going to start a feature to explore spirituality, because as I have said to you many times, I think we're lacking in that aspect as a society, as human beings, because being a human being is not just about your physical body, and maybe you take good care of that through going to the gym, you wash every day, but there's another element of you. And I feel like that element is not being taken care of, because the conversations around spirituality and our soul and what inhabits what cohabits in our bodies, I feel like those conversations are so uncomfortable. And I want us to make those conversations normal. That's why we've had a series on the show about what happens when we die. And we spoke to all different belief systems, several of them. And we asked them, according to your belief systems, what happens when we die? Why are we so scared to have conversations about that? Why are we so scared to explore our spirituality? Why are you so scared to even ask questions about your own beliefs? Whether you believe in African spirituality, whether you believe you're in Islam, whether you are a Christian, whether you read the Torah. Why is it that we are so linear in how we approach this concept of spirituality, and we're not explorative? And by explorative, I don't mean that you've got to abandon what you believe in, but be curious enough to know. So today, we start this feature. We're going to do this every single month, once a month, with Vusumzi Nxande. It's Exploring Spirituality, and today we're going to start by looking at religion in a changing world. What does your religion or belief systems mean to you today? Very often, we like to believe that faith is personal, that we believe how we pray, how we engage with the divine. We believe it's an intimate exchange between ourselves and God, untouched by politics or history, the world around us. But our faith is not formed in isolation. It's shaped by the times we live in, the conflicts that we witnessed, and by the collective fears and hopes of this generation. So I'd like you to join this conversation on 011-883-0702. Do you think religion itself is changing and evolving, or are we witnessing the birth of new spiritual forms? You can send your WhatsApps as well on 072-7021-702. Vusumzi, welcome back to the show, man. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, and thank you for doing this with us. for committing to guide us through these conversations over the next couple of months. And all of us are seeking here, right?
Right.
We are trying to explore. Nobody really has the answers. We're trying to start conversations that often are uncomfortable.
Yes. And I actually think questions are always a very strong place to start from. Don't treat your questions as a hindrance or as something that is a problem. Treat them as opportunities. Treat them as pointers on a map. Yeah. So it's best to go where the questions are leading.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's begin with, and we'll talk a lot, obviously, about our context as South Africa. Where does religion begin for us, and how does it then influence what comes next?
The interesting thing about religion in our country, if we were to stick to like Christianity more broadly, is that if we were to speak to Christians today, their view is that Christianity exists now. They're Christians now. They have a relationship with God. They have a relationship with Christ now. But the reality of it is that Christianity has a history, and it has gone through several phases. And the other reality is that maybe for about only in the last, let's say, 40 to 50 years or so, have Black people in particular had the latitude to choose to be Christian of your own volition, to say, I am choosing. It is not as a system that was sort of imposed on you whereby you did not have a choice, And because of that, we need to be cognizant of the fact that our belief is shaped by not just our personal relationship with God, as you mentioned, or with Christ. It's also shaped by our circumstances. Part of this topic was inspired by this conversation that I had with my mother a couple of weeks ago. It's a story that she tells all the time about the violence in the early 90s, if you remember, the political violence. So she would travel to Joburg, because I live in the West Rand. She would travel to Joburg by train. And then during the peak of the violence, she would tell us of these days where there would be violence on the trains. There would be people shooting at the trains. They would be outside, and the people in the trains would then have to duck. So you would have these people inside the trains, and then there's like bullets flying through the trains, through the windows, and then the people inside, like my mother, they have to take cover under the chairs in the train. And in that moment, her prayer was, can I get home to my children alive? That was her prayer. That wasn't an intimate prayer between a person and God. That was the prayer of a Black woman who lived in a particular time, whose life was shaped by particular influences, and because of that, her faith, her religion, took a particular form. And when I look at, let's say, today, parents of today, not many people pray to get home alive. Their structure of faith and their relationship with God is shaped by other things, And part of the reason why I think we need to start here is that when we pray, when we engage with spirit, and this is also including African spirituality, I'm just using Christianity as an example. When it is shaped by those things, what we tend to forget in the way that our faith is shaped by our circumstances, we forget that a lot of the time, especially as Black people, our problems, our prayers are stemming from systematic problems, right? We're like, I'm praying, I need to improve my relationship with God. I need to be more faithful. But now your problems are systematic. You don't have issues with your faith. I can give you an example. If you have a business, right? If you have a business that is struggling because there's load shedding or there's power cuts and it is struggling, when you pray to God, what are you asking Him for? If you want to go consult, with a healer, what are you asking them to solve? That my business is struggling, and it's struggling because we don't have water in Midrand. What are you asking them of? Right? Because your problem is not faith. Your problem is not what you believe in. But ultimately you feel that it needs to be responded to. If you are a woman who has an abusive husband and you live in a system where GBV is rampant, what are you praying for? Because the issue is not you, and the issue is not your partner per se. The issue is the society that you live in. And I think when we are not cognizant of the fact that the world is shaping our faith, we tend to lose our faith or our connection with spirit and with the divine and with God, because we are not cognizant of the fact that the problems that I'm having are not a spiritual problem. They're actually a systematic problem. And because now we can't separate these things, we are in a place where we feel that spirituality in and of itself is useless.
Yeah. I want to ask you about this geographical argument that often gets placed, during these kind of conversations about being born in America or Europe and Asia or Africa. That influences the kind of religion that you take up.
Yes.
I mean, there are, of course, exceptions
Yes.
where someone who is born in India won't take up, won't be Hindu.
Yes.
They may be Christian. There are exceptions where someone who's born in Japan or who's in America or in even Italy may be a Muslim, for instance. But those are exceptions. So then how do we reconcile this idea of, because one of the things I've had to learn as an adult now is, wait, this Christianity path that I've taken, when I took it as a child, it was not because I chose it. I did not have a relationship with God. I didn't really understand Him. I found this thing in my family, and this is how we lived, and that shaped how I believe. But when I grew up, I realized that I need to make my decision, which is why I learn, I ask the questions, and then I choose now to be a Christian, and I believe that is my decision. But there are many people who have grown up and were born into religious systems. And to this day, they follow the religion of their ancestors, of their parents, and not so much what they truly believe. What do you make of that argument, and what does it say about what we believe as a society if that geographical argument and element can influence really what you believe in?
That's such a great question. Clement, me and you right now speaking English. That means something.
Exactly.
Right? There's a whole history between why your name is Clement.
Yes.
There's a whole history about why me and you are speaking in English. If we're a couple of 100 kilometers from here, we'd be speaking Portuguese.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We are influenced by our history that takes away certain kinds of choices that we could have made, right? And this is very true even with religion. But now, me and you can't choose not to speak English. We can't say, no, we have 11 official languages. The reason why we are choosing to speak this language is that there's a practicality to it. There's a way in which it helps us navigate our particular circumstances, right? So in terms of the idea of faith, I think for people who are deeply religious, it would be something that is difficult for them to process, to say, you can choose a particular faith in that this is how it helps you navigate, and that in the same sentiment, you can choose not to partake in a particular faith because it does not help you. And this is where the idea of religious tolerance becomes important. There's a way in which we don't understand that certain belief systems suit certain people better than it suits others. I believe that there are people who are physiologically built to be Christian. There is a way in which that faith, the way it is constructed, its principles resonate with certain people. There are certain people who are born to be Muslim. Even if they didn't know about it, when they hear about it, it just clicks, it just makes sense. There are people for whom Buddhism could have been best, but the idea of resonance is not of spiritual resonance is not something that we speak about a lot. So in answering your question, there is a choice in belief regardless of your background. But the reality is that will that belief help you in the particular function that you, in the particular circumstance?
Help you navigate those circumstances.
Yeah, some people are Christian because it is the most convenient thing to be. You know, I remember I had a cousin who became Muslim at some point, and I asked him, he was living in Limpopo at the time, and I asked him, and then when he's like, no, it's because I'm a businessman, and when you want to do business within this particular industry of small businesses, you have to, you know, the people who run things are the Muslim people, and they don't want to do business with people who are not of Muslim faith. So I became that. So it was the most convenient thing for me to do. You know, in many ways in our history, it would have been more convenient for you to be Christian if you wanted to navigate the world more than it would have been for you to be something else, because the system did not allow for that. You know, so we need to be cognizant of the fact that, one, there are belief systems that are more resonant for some people than there are. It is not a one size fits all, but it's difficult, you know, for the deeply religious people to believe that other faiths it's not about truth, it's about resonance.
Yeah.
Because resonance is, they feel like it's a choice, but resonance is not a choice.
Yeah.
And the challenge with resonance is that it's the difference between what is right and what feels right.
So, do we have more people seeking spirituality today? Because it almost feels like Christianity, let me use that example, or even the interest in the Bible, seem to be rising again. On TikTok, you see, you know, people who are like going back to church, like Catholics. There's like a whole movement. And I don't know if that's just what we see portrayed on social media, but it seems like people are seeking spirituality. And I don't know if that has got to do with the world we live in today. I mean, COVID, you were so we were individualistic in that way. In fact, circumstances forced us to be that.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of challenges we're dealing with in today's world that are unexplained and sometimes will force you to find an answer somewhere.
Yeah.
Do you think we're seeking more and more? And if that's the case, why? Because also, sorry, Fusumzi, I pick up a lot from even people around me who are beginning to ask questions. So they're trying to explore, like they read spiritual books that may have nothing to do with their own belief systems. They are asking questions that their religious leaders have always told them, don't question certain things. And I wonder what is behind that.
What I can say to that is that in times of chaos, in times of turmoil, people lean towards spirituality. Right? A lot of people had their spiritual awakening during COVID. There are a lot of people who, because of the isolation, because of the way in which the world stopped making sense and the uncertainty of it. If we were to look at the stats around 2020, 2021, there was a spike in church attendance, or rather not even church attendance because we couldn't go to church, but in religious interest. You know, TikTok blew up with a lot of spirituality. The socials blew up with a lot of spirituality. There is a way in which the human spirit tries to find some meaning in the world. And the irony of it is that the countries that are less religious are the countries that are more economically stable.
Yeah.
Which is ironic, right? It's ironic in the sense that in church or, you know, in a lot of faith, we're made to believe that if you believe strong enough, your life becomes better. If you have a good relationship with God, your life becomes better. But the people who do have a better life are actually less religious. They believe less in God. But in terms of numbers, the numbers of, let's say, Christianity, for instance, the actual number of Christians has not changed, has changed by like 1% in 100 years. In 100 years, it has changed by about 1% only. There's been 1% difference in the past 100 years. The shift that is happening is that it is not the number of people it is who these people are. What has happened is that gradually over the past couple of decades, the number of Christians in the West has steadily declined. It has, and in some instances, it has tanked.
And yet
altogether.
in sub-Saharan Africa,
and then in sub-Saharan Africa,
it's rising.
It is rising, right? Just a basic fact: the median age of a Christian in the West, in America, in Europe, the median age of a Christian is 45 years old. In Africa, it's 19 years old, right? And there are in the West, for every 3 people that leave Christianity, only 1 joins, right? So Christianity in the West is dying, and is dying in such a way that it is not a steep decline whereby something can happen and turn it back up. It is happening over such a prolonged period of time that it's getting worked out of people's system, whereby it is like, it's easier when something happens gradually. It is harder and harder to get out of it, rather than when it happens all of a sudden,
Could that be because you've indicated that in these countries where the economy is stable, could it be because just inherently as human beings, when we can do things for ourselves, and I say that in inverted commas, so you've got a job, the economy is stable, education is guaranteed, healthcare is guaranteed, then you somehow feel like you don't necessarily need the superpower that can solve your issues. But when you are in some parts of the country where you are below the poverty line, where there's still a need of some sorts, then you still feel the need to appeal to a higher power that can solve some of your issues. And once again, I want to preface this by saying, of course, there are exceptions. That's why you've got rich people who can still believe, even when they can do things for themselves. But I do think that those are exceptions in a way. Do you find that, I'm trying to understand, why is it that in these places where the economy is so stable, people are able to do stuff for themselves, it seems to be declining, religion or spirituality, and yet you've got places like Southern Africa where it's rising. What could be the explanation then?
Ego. When you start believing that you have done everything yourself and you have no need, and there's no, you have, and science has answered all your questions, and science has convinced you that all there is your physical effort, and weird things like if you work hard, things will work out for you. You believe in yourself, and you believe in the capacity of you as a human being, and then that severs, it completely cuts your relationship to that. In all the things that you have done, you're still relatively nothing in the broader scheme of things.
Because there are people who believe that their hard work is what works. They don't pray, they don't believe in a God or a superpower, but they are successful. And then you've got other people who equally will believe that I'm nothing without God. God will answer my prayers, and yet they've been praying for the last 10 years for God to heal their daughter who's got cancer, or for God to give them employment, and they still don't have it. But I find that because of how spiritual we've become, we find justifications for the failures, quote unquote, for lack of a better word, in our prayers. So if you've been praying for your mom to be healed and your mom still dies, sadly, 3 weeks later, there's a justification of, no, but it's the will of God. But if you pray for your mom to be healed from cancer and 3 weeks later your mom is in remission, it's look at God. So there's no space for God to falter. It's He's always a good God, but if He doesn't answer my prayers, then no, He's not a bad God. It's just His will.
Because
we always find the justification.
Because we have a transactional relationship. If I do this, this must happen.
This must happen.
Which is not the case.
We'll get into more of that after the latest in Eyewitness News headlines. It's 10:32. Sviso, good morning.
Thanks, Clement. Good morning. Suspended top cop Richard Shibiri says he believes there were no officers who were promised career advancement there were officers who were promised career advancement in exchange for testifying negatively against him at the Madlanga Commission. Shibiri says witness A, who serves under him in the organized crime unit at SAPS, has recently been promoted from warrant officer to sergeant following his testimony at the commission. When witness A testified last year, he accused Shibiri of trying to suppress the investigation into the murder of Vereniging engineer Armand Swart by attempting to bribe him and other investigators who were on the case. The son of former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe has abandoned his bail application in the Alexandra Magistrates Court. Clement Mugabe and his co-accused Tobias Matonze appeared in the dock this morning, where their legal team also indicated that it wants to proceed to a plea agreement. The case has been postponed to next Tuesday for plea negotiations. And scores of people have been killed in airstrikes in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The overnight attacks happened in the city of Goma, which is controlled by the Rwanda-backed M23 militia. Since taking up arms again in 2021, the M23 has seized large parts of the mineral-rich Congolese east with Rwanda's backing. And those are the headlines. This EWN and more at 11 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
Let's start in Centurion. We've got roadworks taking place on the N14 North right near Euphus Road. Delays from Littleton Road. Please do expect about a 20-minute hold-up there. If you can, try to use the N1 North instead through areas like Monument Park as well as Melno Park towards the CBD. While traveling in Joburg, we've got delays along the M2 West. This is between the Crown Turn-Off and Main Reef Road. There's also queuing traffic reported in the east of Joburg, particularly on the R24 Way East. This is between Barber Road and Isanda Road. A major accident seen there. Please try to avoid that one. And if you're heading towards Bedford View, do expect delays on the R24 West and the N12 West between Edenville Road and the N12 merge. More updates coming up. Stay tuned.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Need a seat? Try 7 or 5. It's your call. Want a sunroof? Make it a panoramic. Gotta have power? How does award-winning 138 kilowatt sound? The Changan CS75 Pro is big enough for the kids, smart enough for your playlist, and stylish enough for your Friday night too. Why settle when you can have it all without compromise? The Changan CS75 Pro. Drive tomorrow's SUV today. Visit changanmotors.co.za for more.
Changan, driven to evolve. Ask yourself, what matters most?
I just want to be there when she takes her first steps.
And still be around for her first dance.
It's knowing I'm not just covered, I'm cared for.
It's having the strength to say I'm back.
It's just knowing Mom will be okay.
It's coming home.
Bonitas goes beyond benefits and claims. Bonitas, medical aid for South Africa. Voted #1 medical aid in the Ask Africa Orange Index Awards for the second year running. Visit bonitas.co.za and find your plan.
To walk the talk is to turn words into meaningful actions. And it's what we at 702 are committed to doing every day. We're also committed to following the rules set out by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission's Code of Conduct. To give you balanced programming, fair comment, and accurate news. But if we stumble along the way and you feel we're not living up to the code, let us know on comment@702.co.za. And if after that you're still not happy, you can direct your complaint in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission, PO Box 412365, Craig Hall 2024. For more, visit bccsa.co.za. 702.
The Clement Manyathela Show.
Let's walk the talk.
It's 24 minutes before 11 o'clock. We're speaking to Vusumzi Ngande. We have started a new feature today. We're going to do this monthly, but I'm enjoying this chat so much that I wish we were doing this feature every single week. We call it Exploring Spirituality with Vusumzi Ngande. And I want you to join the conversation on 011-883-0702. If anything piqued your interest, or you've got a question, or you are exploring something, you've got an input, you can send your WhatsApps as well on 0727021702. Let's start with Makosonke, who's calling us from Jabulani in Soweto. Makosonke, good morning.
Good morning, and to your guest as well, Clement.
Sure.
Clement, in my journey, what I've realized with the issue of faith is that one of the things that I made a mistake with was not understanding the biblical principles, and also not understanding the translation in Hebrew and Greek, so that at the end of the day, I understand the meaning of what I'm reading. Because sometimes when you understand something by just reading it, you might miss the meaning if ever you don't know the translation of Hebrew or Greek with regards to whatever it is that you want to understand. And actually, I'm more focusing on the issue of why some people would be successful even though they don't believe. Do you understand? And the issue is that I won't even also discard the fact that God doesn't play a role in my life, because there are certain things that are spiritual that I cannot explain in terms of saying that why this thing has happened. Because some things, like for example, you remember I just told you that I have a problem with my marriage. Certain things I just pray about them. Do you understand? And I see change, not because of I've implemented certain principles in terms of maybe doing certain things, but just starting seeing change by the virtue of understanding that I have a creator that created me. Do you understand? There is a power beyond what is happening regarding to my life. So basically, for me, is that one thing that delays a lot of believers, especially those who believe in the Bible, is the fact that they don't doing that from those two issues that I've raised, which is the applying biblical principle and also understanding the meaning through Greek and Hebrew.
Okay, Makosonke, thank you so much for your thoughts. I'll get Vusumzi to reflect on that if he's got some reflections. Sizwe, you're in Pinville. Good morning.
Morning, Clement, and morning to your guest as well.
Go ahead.
Morning, sir.
I also want to touch on the aspect of reason in religion generally. It has been my experience that most religion, if not some, do not encourage rationale or reason or something which I call the courage to doubt. The courage to doubt. By that I mean I imply that we must not be shy to question God, so that our faith can develop stronger by questioning God. And so I believe through rationale and engaging robustly with some of the doctrines in some particular religion, we might be able to develop stronger and much more deeper faith. Most of the things that are being questioned are called heresy. So they are beginning to be heretic or haram in Islam. I have a friend who's a Muslim, and I asked him one day, I say, why is it that you guys, Muslims, can marry a Christian woman and convert her to a Muslim, but a Christian guy can't marry a Muslim woman? And he says to me, no, it's the law. I say, no, but love knows no religion, knows no color. But why he says, no, now you're beginning to attack my religion. He became emotional. I had to stop it.
Yeah.
So rationale is the key.
Yeah. So Sizwe, thank you so much for that. And I was responding there and I said, who? Because it touched on my most favorite quote in a movie. I don't know if you've watched Conclave. Check it out, the movie Conclave. Yes. There's my favorite, one of my favorite
one that
actors.
ended up turning out into real life situation.
Yeah, it did. So his name is Ralph Fiennes, this actor
Ralph
on
Fiennes,
Conclave.
yes.
Fiennes.
Yes.
Thank you. In the movie, he says, this is my favorite quote in the movie. He says, and I quote, "Our faith is a living thing precisely because it walks hand in hand with doubt. If there was only certainty and no doubt, there would be no mystery and therefore no need for faith." And when he uttered those words in that film, I thought, oh my God, that's it. But religion teaches you not to doubt.
Yes.
And yet it cannot exist without doubt. Because if you have certainty, what's the point? Do you find then that, because what he's raising there is rationale. I do also, by the way, think spiritual things are not always going to be rational.
Yeah.
That's why people believe in miracles. Like you suddenly are healed or because you prayed. So some things you can't really reason and rationally explain them because it's spirituality. They're not meant to be explainable. What do you think?
That quote is actually very important. And based on what Caesar was bringing up about the courage to question. Story time. So in the 1500s, there was a time in Christianity where you could buy your way out of hell, where you could pay money to get out of hell,
so that you don't end up in hell.
So
or
you
hell
leave,
here.
So you leave earlier. So in Catholicism, there's a place called purgatory.
Yes.
So purgatory is basically where it's sort of, it's not like hell per se, but it's where your soul gets cleansed.
It's in between.
Before. Yes, it's an in-between space where but it's a place of suffering where your soul gets cleansed through suffering. So there was a time in Catholicism whereby you could do certain things to reduce the amount of time that you spend in purgatory. It could be like prayers, going to certain holy sites. But around the 1500s, you could pay money to get out of hell. If you pay certain amount of money, there was like a ratio. If you pay this amount of money, you get 10 years out of hell. If you pay this amount, and this was a decree by the Pope at the time, right? So there was this guy called Martin Luther, who was a German monk, you know. So one day he was going to Rome. He needed to report on something, and when he started getting an understanding of this thing of indulgences, he knew about it. But now when he was in Rome, he's seeing it how it's like, you know, Rome at the time was like New York. It was like debauchery, and people could do, especially the wealthy, they could do a lot of things because they knew that they had money. They weren't going to spend any time to pay for their sins, right? So he decided to challenge that. So this one person, this one monk, he challenged the entire Roman Catholic Church, you know. He had, as Jesus says, the courage to question. And he was like, how do we know? He asked a simple question. How do you know it actually works? How do you actually know that this money that you've paid will actually work? You know, because at the time, it was a situation whereby you could go to a particular church. He went to a particular church, and you had to crawl up the stairs. If you crawl up the stairs on your knees, on your hands and knees, and reciting the Lord's Prayer, you get 250 years off. And he did that. And I think the stairs just abused his knees. So he gets to the top of the stairs. That's when he has this moment. He's like, nah, this is nonsense. So then in 1517, he goes, he basically nails, he has this charter called the 95 Theses that he nails onto the church door to say, this thing is actually rubbish. These are the laws that we as a church actually need to abide by, right? With that action, Martin Luther gave birth to every single church that you know. That was the Protestant movement. So every church, Methodists, like Presbyterian, Mapostola, every single church that you know was born out of Martin Luther having the courage to challenge the church to say. And the interesting thing is people think that when you challenge religion, you're challenging God. He said, this is not about the Bible. Take the Bible and put it, I'm questioning religion. I'm questioning the church. And these 95 theses are how the church must conduct itself, not how people must relate to the Bible, because it is the religion that is corrupting people, not God. True. And not the Bible.
And religious leaders don't want people to be spiritual, because spirituality requires for you to have that personal relationship and ask questions and be satisfied.
That's why it was illegal for people to read the Bible.
Because somebody else had to tell you what it says.
People were not. They kept it in Latin because they didn't want people. The church said that it is sinful for people to read the Bible for themselves.
One of the things that shocked me is when I ask, my fellow Christian brothers and sisters, and I'm like, do you know how the Bible came about? A lot of them don't know. And I'm like, oh my God. So what? You think it just fell from heaven? Are you not interested in the context of how did the book of Paul make it there? How did these books,
the canonical books,
and did we have any other books that existed before? Yes. And who voted?
Yeah,
because there are politicians who voted for which books are gonna be in the Bible.
Yeah,
but that context, they don't care about it, and I get it because maybe you care about the message, but for me, that worries me that I'm believing in something and yet I don't know the origins of it. Yeah. That worries me. And when you start questioning that, then you are seen as you're questioning God. Let's go to see these WhatsApp voice notes that have also come through on 0727021702.
Clement, is it still morning? Good morning. I'm not Christian. Ne? That is number one. I'm not Christian, and I'll never be, and I'll never force my kids to be Christians. The only thing I will do is to keep on my belief. I'm a spiritualist. That is number one. And I always tell people I'm a believer. Then they will say I'm confused. I'm not. I believe there's God, and I believe there's ancestors. I don't believe in anything that has to do with Jesus Christ. And the people who are confused are the ones who are thinking God and Jesus Christ is the same thing. Jesus was in a human form. God is a spiritual part of it. So, I'm not Christian. I'm just a spiritualist, and I'm a believer. To say, yeah, uNkulunkulu khona, and my ancestors are there. Anything that has to do with Jesus, nekala yakhe nah. And this.
Good morning, Clement and Vusi. I just joined in and I recognize the voice because I've been listening to all the podcasts. I've learned so much. Now I'm struggling to find a podcast that can capture the attention as much as Jenny Kwandu. I've learned a lot about my origin, but I've chosen to continue with Christianity, and I am now doing so with understanding and reflection on the context. Thank you so much, Vusi. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's so cool.
It's really cool. I think we need to make it clear to people that we are not disparaging Christianity. I believe Christianity is an extremely important faith system for a lot of people. It is a crucial aspect of our society. But now, here's another reality that people may or may not know, especially black people, right? So we spoke a bit about the stats, about the number of Christians. There are now officially 70% of Christians are in what they call the global south. Right, and the numbers are in about 10 to 15 years are going to be 80%, right? And looking at all the things, the dynamics that are happening religiously around the world, the spiritual epicenter of Christianity, the center of gravity of Christianity, has shifted to Africa. I don't know how many Anglicans know this, but last week there was the biggest split in the history of the Anglican Church happened last week, whereby there was what they call the Global Anglican Communion, broke away from the Anglican Church, the Church of England. This Global Anglican Communion is headed by Africans. They carry 80% of the Anglicans in the world within their congregations. And they decided to move away from the Church of England because the Africans believe that the Anglican Church, the Church of England, is no longer the true church. Right? So now, in more ways than one, spirituality from this moment onwards, as we know it, Christianity, is in the hands of Africans. The cycle of spirituality has shifted from the West into the South. And now, from this point onwards that we're in, it's not something that is coming. We are here now. The look, the identity, the character, the shape of Christianity from this point onwards is going to be decided by Africans. Right? And I don't know what that means to people. That from now on, we will never be able to say or associate Christianity with the West. The West has, in many ways, lost credibility. The mask has fallen off, as the Prime Minister of Canada said. It's not even a pretense anymore. The world order has shifted. The West no longer holds the moral high ground for anything, because every day we switch on our television, we go online, and we see what the West is doing. So now, the face of Christianity, the face of faith, will no longer be associated with the Western world. And now the question is, now that we are here, it is like Africa's moment has actually arrived. Our spiritual moment that we thought was going to come. One day Africa will rise. Actually, it is here. And the tricky part about it is that we did not get here through merit. We get here through cycles because human society is governed by cycles. Civilizations rise and fall, right? Power moves from this place to it shifts. It's like winter. Winter right now is in another country. It's gonna come here soon. So now we are in our moment, and whether or not it is going to work in a particular way, or rather what Christianity is going to mean to humanity, is now going to be decided by Africans. And the question is, what are they going to do about it?
Morning, Clement, and your guest. This is Mnadisi here. I've got a question for your guest on religion. I mean, I was born 40 years ago into a Christian family, and I now have a child who's now 10, who's starting to understand what religions and that. So what I would like to know is, when I grew up, I understood that, I'm Christian because when I was born, my parents were Christian and that. So at what age do we allow kids to then choose what they want to be? Because I'm also raising my son as Christian because that's what I was raised as. And I mean, at what should I wait for him to turn 18 and then he says, this is what I want to follow? It's a bit confusing for me there. When does one choose that now, I'm going to let my kid choose what he wants? Thank you.
Hi, Clement. When it comes to spirituality, I'm a Christian, so I find that, as your guest says, the relationship is presumed to be transactional. When I do this, God will do that. But I think in my walk with God, which is Jehovah, the God of the Bible, I've come to realize that we're not taught much about his sovereign power, meaning God does what he wants when he wants it. And I mean, maybe for me, that's what explains some of the answers that we get the opposite. If you pray for healing when someone doesn't get healed, then God has decided that person has to go, or like that. Like it's not. It shouldn't be like I do this, God does that. God does what he knows is best. That's when I think, for me, I need to trust in his sovereign powers, sovereignty, that when something happens in a way that I did not want to happen, that's when I come to the point of let his will be done, because that's a prayer that we pray, that his will be done, let his kingdom come. So I think as Christians, I find that we're not taught much about his sovereign power, that he decides, he has a final word. Okay, that's how I understand it.
Could it be, for Sumzi, that and please, let's not forget that question about at what age do you then introduce religion? But I'm interested in this comment as well. Could it be that part of the reason is we think God is an emotional God? Or, I listened to, on your podcast, the first time you did a live show, you had all these guests, and I listened to Gogo Obrimachikri.
Yes.
And he said something so profound. He said, as human beings, we have created our own God.
Yeah.
He says there's a God who exists, there's a source, a creator of all, that we are incapable as humans to understand and fathom what that creator looks like. But as human beings, because we're always trying to survive and understand, we've created our own God. That's why we've given him an identity.
An agenda.
We've given him a gender. We've given him all these characteristics, because that's how we survive. We have to relate with something. We are uncomfortable as humans to relate with a thing we don't understand. And I thought that was so profound, and which is why I'm asking now. Maybe we actually have given this God an identity that he's an emotional God. That's why we think, okay, I can go fast and beg him for 1, 2, 3. But what if it doesn't happen?
I can share something else that he shared with me in our conversations. And we're talking about ancestors, and he says when Ugogo comes to you, Omkulu comes to you, he comes to you in that form because that's what makes sense to you. He's like, if they were to come to you in spirit, in the actual spiritual form, you wouldn't even know what you're looking at. So we create that interface, and in many ways, God the being God, also understands that human beings do need an interface. That's why you have all these different religious leaders like Jesus, like Buddha, like, all around the world, because we don't, human beings were built in such a way that we need for things to look like us for us to be able to relate to it. If God came in a shape that we don't understand, or if Jesus was in a shape that we didn't understand, we would not be able to relate. That's why, when people have pets, they're like, the more human-like the dog is, the more we seem to love the dog. Like, he can listen, he can talk, he can do this thing, because that's what makes us comfortable. So in the question of what age to introduce religion to a child, I believe that your child was already introduced to God way before you said anything, because your child is watching you every day. Your child is watching you how you deal with things. Do you pray? You can't tell a child, no, Jesus is Lord, but you don't. It doesn't show in your life. You are going to teach your child the thing that you are, whether you want to or not. The things that you're going to say are only going to be secondary. When you are facing challenges and you go and pray and you bring God into the different situations in your life, that's how your child is learning about those. It has already happened, right? So at the question of the age, it's not about the age. From birth, you're teaching your child about God because that's your God. What you can do, personally, what I believe is that you can explain to your child your beliefs. Explain to them, we are Christian because this is what makes sense to me. We are going to go to church. This is what makes sense to me. When you're older, you can then choose. But because how we function, how I, let's say as a father in a family, or as a father even outside of a family, I can say, this is how I live my life. Don't say, we believe in this, but you don't live by it. You can say, this is how I live my life. These are the principles. These are the spiritual principles. And this is the role that they play in my life.
Yeah. Okay, for Sumzi, I can't believe the time is up.
It flies.
Can I take just 5 minutes of your time after the news?
Yes,
please. Just 5 minutes of your time to wrap up this conversation properly. I'm loving it, and I know a lot of our listeners are enjoying it too. It's a minute before 11.
The Midday Report.
Weekdays,
12 to 1.
Was Rachel Kutumela, the police officer, was she the kind of kingpin?
She's the prime figure in all this, but we do believe that they were working together because some of those killed were family members. Some of them were taking out the policies. After the policy pays out, they would send the majority of the payout to Rachel. She would then distribute it to others. So quite an unfortunate incident.
Brigadier Atlede Mate.
The Midday Report
with Mandy Wiener.
12 to 1 on 702.
Celebrate the power of African storytelling. Join Freedom Park in collaboration with the South African State Theatre for the 13th Ungasali Storytelling Festival on the 14th of March 2026 at the South African State Theatre in Pretoria. Experience powerful performances through poetry, theatre, music, and traditional storytelling as we celebrate the voices and stories that shape our heritage. Tickets are available at Web Tickets for 150 Rand. The Ungasali Storytelling Festival, where African stories come alive. Don't miss it.
Okay, truck 7, that has 0 warning lights. Truck 8, it's just been serviced. I guess we're running like a well-oiled machine. Where would I be without MyWay's comprehensive cover for my vans and trucks? Plus, cover for my customers' orders with goods and transit insurance. I guess we'll never know.
Visit myway.co.za or dial 0860 64 64 64 and get a quote today. MyWay is a licensed non-life insurer and FSP. T's, C's and standard rates apply. MyWay. Live your way.
Some moments are personal. Some spaces are professional. All of them deserve care. At Frond and Filigree, we create handcrafted floral experiences for life's meaningful moments and the places where they happen. From birthdays and anniversaries to hotels, offices and events, our bespoke arrangements are designed with artistry and intention. Because when flowers are done right, they elevate every moment. Visit frondandfiligree.co.za.
This is EWN.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. Suspended top cop Richard Chibiri says he believes there were officers who were promised career advancements in exchange for testifying negatively against him at the Madlanga Commission. Chibiri says witness A, who serves under him in the organised crime unit at SAPS, has recently been promoted following his testimony at the commission. When witness A testified last year, he accused Chibiri of trying to suppress the investigation into the murder of Vereniging engineer Armand Swart by attempting to bribe him and other investigators who were on the case. Suspected cartel boss Katiso Katie Molefe was later arrested for orchestrating Swart's murder, who worked for a firm that blew the lid on a corrupt Transnet tender he was involved in. Testifying before the commission this morning, Chibiri says he is in possession of a signed affidavit by a Sergeant Daniel Mutaung, who was promised a promotion in exchange for providing adverse information on him.
My intention in placing these facts before the Commission is not to cast aspersions upon any individual, but to ensure that the Commission has the benefit of all relevant circumstances when evaluating the evidence before.
The son of former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe has abandoned his bail application in the Alexandra Magistrates Court. Bellarmine Mugabe and his co-accused Tobias Matonze appeared in the dock this morning, where their legal team indicated that it wants to proceed to a plea agreement. The case has now been postponed to next Tuesday for plea negotiations. Mugabe and Matonze are accused of shooting and injuring an employee at their Hyde Park property last month. They face 7 charges, including attempted murder, possession of a firearm and ammunition, defeating the ends of justice, contravening the Immigration Act, theft and pointing a firearm. Justice Minister Mamluku Kubai says it's not her mandate to provide clarity related to allegations of judges unlawfully occupying state-owned houses. Western Cape High Court Judge Daniel Tulare was recently slapped with a notice to vacate a state-owned house in Coles River. Tulare claims judges in the Northwest Province are still being allowed to live in state houses. The DA called on Kubai to clarify whether any other judges, aside from heads of judiciary or the judiciary, are occupying state property. Carlo Peterson reports.
Justice Minister Mamaloko Kubai spokesperson Terence Manasi says matters relating to the allocation of state-owned properties fall under the mandate of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. DA-NCOP member on Security and Justice Nicholas Kotzal says Kubai still has explaining to do.
If the Judge Tulare claim is false, the Minister must correct the record. If it is true, the Minister must explain why it has been allowed to continue.
Kotzal says the DA has submitted parliamentary questions for the Minister to answer related to the matter. Carlo Peterson, Eyewitness News.
And scores of people have been killed in airstrikes in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The overnight attacks happened in the city of Goma, which is controlled by the Rwanda-backed M23 militia. Since taking up arms again in 2021, the M23 has seized large parts of the mineral-rich Congolese east with Rwanda's backing. According to witnesses, the sound of bomb blast and buzzing drones rang out in several residential neighborhoods in Goma, a large provincial capital near the border with Rwanda. Gold is trading at $5,185.11 an ounce. The rand is at 16.35 to the dollar, 21.93 to the pound, 18.97 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $89.94 a barrel.
And in the traffic, we've got delays on the R24 East. This is between Barber Road and Isanda Road. Roadworks are taking place along this route, so do expect delays there. If you want to avoid this backlog, you still have the N12 East, and then you can turn off at the R21 North, especially if you're heading towards the OR Tambo Airport. If you are traveling in Bedfordview, we've got delays on the N3 North. This is between Van Buren Road and the Gilulis interchange. There's also queuing traffic in the city of Tshwane Centurion along the N14 North. That's due to the roadworks that are taking place between Littleton Road and Euphues Road.
A fine day in store for Gauteng. The temperatures will peak at highs between 25 and 26 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour. Suspended top cop Richard Chibiri says he believes there were officers who were promised career advancement in exchange for testifying negatively against him at the Madlanga Commission.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
You're with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
Let's Walk the Talk, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app,
DSTV channel 856,
92.7 and 106 FM.
6 minutes after 11 o'clock. Dumelang, welcome to the third and final hour of the Clement Manyathela Show. Thank you for staying with us. I want us to wrap up exploring spirituality with Vusumzi Ngande. When you have these conversations, you wish you were having them for 2 hours, right? But they're only scheduled for an hour. So I just want to take just 5 minutes of Vusumzi's time to just go through some of the messages you've sent, and we wrap up this conversation. But don't worry, he's going to be with us every single month, once a month. We're going to bring him to have a chat with us as we explore this concept of spirituality together. So let's go to some WhatsApp voice notes that you also sent on 072 702 1702.
Clement, fascinating and emotive topic. Thanks for bringing it up. Quickly, our religions are a function of who colonized us. If we were colonized by the people who colonized the so-called Francophone, and the British colonized Upper Africa, you know that we would be wearing those dresses and doing Islam. So it is a function of who colonizes you. But most importantly, we must all remember that Christianity especially was a vehicle for the imperialistic ambitions of the racists who wanted to do as they please with us and with our resources. We all know that the annals of religious history are just littered with blood and corruption and racism. So that is the most important thing to have uppermost in our mind.
Clement, I must give it to you. Great show. Clement, I agree with your guest. There is a direct correlation between poverty and religion. The poorest countries in the world, the poorest people in the world tend to be more religious. True, there is an exception. America, for example, very religious. However, if you look at the countries that enjoy the highest standards of living in the world, the Nordic and Scandinavian countries, those countries are not religious at all, yet their people enjoy prosperity. Thank you.
Good morning, Clement and 702 listeners. Lima Vusani, mo studio. You're talking a topic, Clement. Yeah, that is very sensitive. Clement, I intend to agree with what Vusi is saying, based on the spiritual belief that we have as people. It's systematic, as Vusi is saying. There is systematic to it. Hence, you find people in developed countries. You never hear them praying for God help me to pay my rent, to take my child to school or have school fees money, because the developed countries, they are already supply that. Here in the southern countries, you hear people saying praying for paying rent, praying for work. That is systematic. I do agree with Mavusani. It's Max here from Honeydew.
Thank you so much. We've got so many other WhatsApp voice notes that we can't get through to. But Vusi, how about we do part 2?
Let's do part 2
of this, yeah?
It's going to be
fun. Can you just wrap it all up for us? Just the last word from what you've heard, and then we will, when you come back next month, we'll do part 2 of this conversation and pick up from where we left off.
I'll take the last message now, right? Where we say that the Western countries, the Scandinavian countries, the Western countries are not religious, and the countries that have a lot of poverty are more religious. The question is, who brought that poverty to those African countries? Who created that system whereby we need to pay for rent? The system that those people built are benefiting from it. The people who brought us the religion are benefiting from the system that created the poverty that we live in. So the fact that those countries are less religious is not a reflection of spirituality itself, but it's a reflection of the system that they built, right? In that it does not exonerate them. The West, the wealth of the West is built on the destruction of the global south and the exploitation of the global south. So we absolutely cannot see the wealth of the West and say it is some kind of moral achievement, because it's not. The reason they don't have to pray for rent is because they're taking all our resources. So that does not ever think that we can equate the idea of being more affluent and less religious as a kind of a moral achievement, because it's not, right? So another thing that we have to remember is that now we've been talking about history, what happened, and I want to emphasize that now Christianity is literally now in the hands of Africans. And what are Africans going to do about it?
That's it. Vusumzi, thank you so much for joining us. This was Exploring Spirituality with Vusumzi Ngande. Go check out the podcast if you want to follow up on this conversation, but go check out his podcast as well. He's got a podcast, Jenny Kwantu, exploring African spirituality and identity. He's got a book as well titled Jenny Kwantu. I've listened to the podcast, I've read the book. I thought they were so insightful. So if you're interested to really learn, and not from someone who is being prescriptive to you about what you should believe in, who is open-minded, you want to listen to that podcast or get yourself that book by Vusumzi Ngande. Thank you so much, brother. See you next month.
Burning questions.
Insightful answers.
Listener's choice.
With Clement Manyathela.
So, time now for our Listener's Choice feature. And Listener's Choice is an opportunity for you to co-curate the content of the show with us. What we do on Listener's Choice is give you an opportunity to tell us what we should talk about on the show. Of course, we organize the show and plan for conversations we think you will appreciate and think are important. But sometimes we miss other things. And if you think we haven't looked at a particular angle or there's a story you think we've missed, just send me an email on cm@702.co.za. Tell us what you want us to discuss on the show, and we'll bring in the relevant experts to respond to your questions and tackle that topic. Today, we are talking about how much prisoners cost the state. One of our listeners has asked that we discuss this. How much do we, as taxpayers, pay towards the upkeep of prisoners? And as I was saying to you earlier, of course, every day in this country, thousands of people wake up behind bars. They're housed, they are fed, they are guarded, they are provided healthcare by the state. But we've got to wonder, what actually are the costs to you as a taxpayer? We've invited Singabako Ngumalo, who is with the Correctional Services Department, to chat to us about this and answer some of our questions. And if you've got your own questions, please give us a call on 011-883-0702 or send a WhatsApp on 072-702-1702. Singabako, thanks for coming through, brother. Good morning.
Hey, very good morning, Clement, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, so maybe let's start with the more broader numbers first, right? And look at like the budget that the department has, and just broadly speaking, how much does it cost to keep someone in prison in this country?
Okay. I think perhaps what we need to highlight is that we have two categories of offenders in South Africa. You have one, or remand detainees. Those are people who have not been sentenced as yet, who are attending to court cases. They are housed in correctional facilities after their appearance in court. And you also then have a second category, which is sentenced offenders. Why am I clarifying this? Is because the cost is not the same. Someone who is remanded is basically being kept in a correctional facility because you are presumed innocent until proven otherwise. Mm-hmm. So you do not even participate in programs, meaning all that we spend on you is just general upkeep, that you are able to wash, you eat, and then other needs, then they can be taken care of. But with a sentenced offender, it goes beyond just washing, eating. You then attend to correctional programs, which cost the state money. Therefore, then that cost will differ. General will say an inmate will cost South Africa about 463 rands, some maybe to about 480. But that doesn't include costs associated with care that must be rendered if perhaps you get sick or perhaps you require services of a social worker or a psychologist, or you must be treated outside the correctional facility, that cost will then go much higher. Same as a sentenced offender who must now attend to correctional programs, then that cost again will go way above 480 per day.
Okay, so 480 per day. And how do we break it down, though? Where does it go to?
Roughly, when we crunch the numbers,
Yeah.
we always say per month an inmate is costing us about 13,800 to 14,400
Per inmate?
Yes, per inmate.
13,500. My goodness. And yet people who are unemployed in this country will get like a 360 rand if they're lucky per month.
Per month. Hence, our budget goes just above 28 billion a year.
Whew. So here's a tricky thing, Singabako, that some people don't realize. Of course, prisons are meant to be, a bit punitive because you do want to punish the prisoners for the crimes that they've committed. But you want it to be a process of rehabilitation. So maybe explain where that money goes to. Like, does it go into the food that they eat? Do they have medical doctors who come check them, once in a while? And why is it important for our government to still treat the people in prisons as human beings? Because human rights are human rights, whether you're in prison or out of prison. Can you just explain that to people who are just wondering, why is it acceptable that prisoners seems to be living a much better life than an ordinary South African who lives below the poverty line, who follows the rules?
Okay. The point that you just raised is very important because our constitution is very clear. It says every human being must be treated with dignity. You still have rights even if you are detained in a correctional facility. Yes, there will be limitations, but you must be given access to food, access to water, and access to life, meaning that when you are sick, you must be taken care of. So a person who is incarcerated will not lose those basic rights, hence it's defined as basic rights. But then what happens when you're in a correctional facility? There's quite a number of limitations because you are in a correctional facility, you lose some of those rights that ordinarily people out there will enjoy, like freedom of movement, freedom of participation, and some other things. But then the mandate of correctional services is to say, we do not just warehouse you until your sentence is complete. We're saying, how do we correct the wrong in you, rehabilitate you so that post-incarceration you could be released being a better human being, but also a law-abiding citizen. Hence, then it's important that you say, okay, in as much as you do have access to basic needs that a human being will have, but then we need to go beyond that in saying that upon correcting the wrong in you, how do we then arm you with at least something that will give you, get you going once out there so that you do not relapse into the life of crime. Hence, it's important then that the element of rehabilitation comes in. You then get those costs, then additional costs. Why then our budget will be where it is, because we now render additional services beyond just keeping you in a correctional facility.
Okay, so how do you balance the concern South Africans have that sometimes prisoners are seen to be living luxuriously? I mean, I wonder, I've come to broadcast, we've come to broadcast live from some of your correctional services. We've spoken to prisoners there. In fact, we should be coming back soon, Singabako. We should organize for us to return again because the listeners enjoyed the conversation we had. But when you look at the food that they eat, it's not like it's anything fancy. But at the end of the day, there are South Africans who just don't have money even for the soup that the prisoners enjoy in the morning. So how do you balance, one, ensuring that these people, of course, get nutritious food, their rights are still respected when they are behind bars, but you also don't want them to be enjoying things that most South Africans who are poor don't even enjoy or have the luxury to enjoy, because the risk you're running is some people are going to commit crime just so that they can be in prison, because that's the way to be safe. I mean, foreign nationals I've heard some of them will commit a crime because that means we're going to be behind bars, which means we are guaranteed food, we are guaranteed a roof above our heads. So how do you balance the two?
Yes. Being in a correctional facility goes beyond just having a meal and a bed to sleep on. There's quite a number of others. Hence, in your engagement with offenders, you will never get an offender who will say, it is nice here in prison, I want to stay here as much as I can. No one will ever say that, because it's not a prison environment where a person will say, I would prefer to stay here rather than being out there and enjoying life. But then, as a state, in as much as we provide those basic needs, there are other needs that, we say as a department, it cannot be that a person will just sit in a correctional facility and say, I'm waiting for the plate of food. You also have to work for that. This is taxpayers' money, where we are able to then offset some of those costs by making a contribution to the fiscus. Let us do so. Hence, you will find us going aggressively in saying that offenders need to work. You will find us having farms, having wood workshops, steel workshops, and other line operations that you'll find in correctional facilities, where we are saying the furniture that we produce, when we sell it, the money that we get out of that must then be routed back into the department, so that at least, the fiscal is not strained because we've got such a bigger population. But you also say that there is food that we can produce ourselves rather than having to go and buy it. Let us do that. Yes, some of it in the beginning, it does cost money. I'll just give you an example of a bakery. If we are starting a bakery, you need a lot of money in terms of buying the machinery, the infrastructure. But once that bakery is in full operation, after about 6 to 7 years, you are then in the position to have recovered fully all those costs when you're putting up the infrastructure. You are now able to then benefit in terms of getting that bread at a far lesser cost when you have to go and buy it out there, where you buy bread for like 21 rands, whereas when we produce it internally, we produce that bread for like 9 rand to about 11 rand. So that's where you start to realize savings.
When they study behind bars, who's paying for their studies? Are we as taxpayers also paying for their studies?
In South Africa, your primary education up to high school, like grade 12 and below, that is freely available. But once they go to a tertiary level, they then have to pay for that. You'll find a number of families paying for inmates to take their studies further. Okay. Some do even get bursaries. But what we make it a point is that no one is denied from different institutions, in most cases from different institutions. But we make it a point that grade 12 downwards, that is freely available to all inmates.
Singabako, I hear you. I'm so uncomfortable with the 13,500 we spent per prisoner per month. I just think that is a lot of money, and I get it. I understand what you've said. I'm just juxtaposing that with so many South Africans out there who live below the poverty line, and they don't even get a fraction of that. I want to give the listeners a chance.
Yes.
Want to respond to that?
It's the reason why, it's the reason why we are fighting, not just saying, pushing to the convicted. We are going all over and saying that we need to do something about the crime levels in this country. If we can get it, to decrease from where it is, the better for all of us. Because you look at our inmate population, it has increased to almost 170,000. We've never had that number in many years. And you then have to ask yourself, why is our crime level so high? Is there anything that we can do? And to say, how best can we then reduce overcrowding? Do we really have to take anyone who has just committed even petty offenses to a correctional facility? Or we look at alternative means for those people to be rehabilitated? Why do we have to keep drug addicts, people who must be taken to a drug rehabilitation center, to be treated there and be released? But you find a number of those people in our facilities.
Okay, let's hear from our listeners. Maxwell, you're in Pretoria. What do you want to say? Good morning.
Good morning, Manyathela. I just want to dispute the issue of 13,000 per prisoner, because you get one slice of bread. It's not even blue ribbon bread. They make it somewhere. It doesn't have even an energy. On 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, they give you old black beans. how can that price be that much? So for me, I think the pricing from the department is absolutely not so good. The food is extremely horrible, and
so you've been to prison yourself, Maxwell?
100%, Manyathela.
Okay.
I can
But remember, the
attest.
13,000 doesn't just go to food. There are other programs. They have to pay psychologists. There are other things that money goes towards.
Yeah, but they must not say it's a lie. In fact, the probe is needed because the department, the money that is putting on public, the prison doesn't even get even a single of that situation. Cell phones are being sold by the same warders, but the punishment go to the prisoners.
Oh, got you. Maxwell in Pretoria, thank you. Is it Jano Engelbrecht calling us from Cape Town? Good morning.
Good morning, Clement, and good morning to the listeners.
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, look, the problem is that we sit with overpopulated prisons, and correctional services, I think, might get a bad rap unnecessarily because they are the last chain, the last in the entire criminal justice chain. Now, they have to provide housing and food and stuff, and these things cost money. But our problem actually sits with the Department of Justice in that there's 52,000 criminal case backlog, and all of these guys become remand detainees, and you can't budget for that. That's why we sit with a tremendous cost. Now, the department is trying at its best in terms of self-sufficiency to, do farms, bakeries, and all of these things. But you can't really budget for remand detainees because you just don't know how many you're going to get. And we also have to look at our our criminal, the entire criminal justice system.
Yeah.
Because sentencing regime, for one. Because if the money is being eaten up by remand detainees, there's not much left to do rehabilitation, which is in actual fact what
important.
you want.
That's what we should prioritize. Yeah, that's what we should prioritize. Yeah, Yano, got you. Thank you so much for your contribution. Let's go to some WhatsApps.
Hey, Clement, this topic about us supporting people who have done us wrong. Hey, in Charisadi. Pain mo belong. I don't know, it's like going to prison these days is luxury, and you don't pay for rent, you don't pay for electricity, you watch TV for free, you use sanitation for free, drink water for free, electricity is provided for free, and yet you get higher education for free. And those who are working hard, the ones who deserve to get free higher education. The government says they can't afford to give them free higher education. His students protest every year. They don't have accommodation. They don't have food. They don't have money to pay for admin fees. They can't get placements. But yet, prisoners have it luxurious.
Yeah, I've got a message here, Singabako, and I always chuckle a bit. I do love it when we do get messages from inside prison. And there's a prisoner listening to us right now in one of the Gauteng centers, Anonymous, who says, "Good morning, Clement. Please ask your guest there, why is there no budget to feed inmates at the moment? We, as sentenced prisoners, are not getting full meals anymore. Since December last year, we're eating pap and cabbage or bread and beans every day, and there's no vegetables for our meals while we are working as inmates on the farms here in Gauteng. The idea that we're living a soft life is a myth. We're living in overcrowded cells and we don't get any medical care." Is it true, Singabako, that they haven't been getting full meals every day?
Clement, the good thing is that you've been to our correctional facilities, and we must do another visit, and that your show is early in the morning, because that's when you can also get to see what type of meals are provided to offenders. One, it's balanced diet meals. Two, it is prescribed in law that offenders must get 3 meals a day. You can then look at the interval, but then that's what they deserve. So that will talk to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So there is no way that you can alter that, because offenders will take you to court and saying that you are no longer following the legal prescripts. Provide us with 3 meals a day. And it's even prescribed what goes into a meal, meaning that, you will have, your starch, your fruit, every ingredient that is required has to be there. Hence, from time to time, there's always this discourse with law-abiding citizens saying that at times you don't even get to enjoy the type of meal that you'll find in a correctional facility. Why are then offenders given all these? Because to them it looks like it's luxury, whereas it's not. But as a department, we always strike that balance to say offenders have to work so that they can assist the state. But also, what about the law-abiding citizens? Hence, as a department, we cannot just sit back and say the law requires us to do the following, therefore we're doing that. But we must be sensitive towards the needs of our people. Hence, the surplus that you get, Clement, we even provide it to old age homes, to schools, and to other people who are in need. Hence, you even find us building houses for those who require shelter. Unfortunately, we cannot use state money for that, but we do have donors who will say, yes, money or yes, material. We then offer offender labor in saying that contribute back to the community that you've offended.
Yeah, all right. Singabako, thank you for coming through. Yeah, thank you for coming to engage with us about this. I really appreciate your time. Singabako Ngumalo is the spokesperson at the Correctional Services Department. We'll come back to one of the prisons. When did we do it? 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we did an OB at one of the Correctional Services centers, and we'll come back to the prisons to continue this conversation because, wow, 13,500 per prisoner per month? Bali, good morning.
Thanks, Clement. Good morning. Lawyers for Bellarmine Mugabe are exploring possible plea negotiations after it emerged that he and his co-accused are in the country illegally. The son of late former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, as well as Tobias Matonze, appeared in court today where they abandoned their bail applications. The pair was arrested in connection with the shooting of an employee at the Mugabe residence in Hyde Park last month. Their defense lawyer says his clients may consider pleading guilty. Suspended top cop Richard Shibiri says he believes there were officers who were promised career advancements in exchange for testifying negatively against him at the Madlanga Commission. Shibiri says witness A, who serves under him in the organised crime unit at the SAPS, has recently been promoted following his testimony at the Commission. And scores of people have been killed in airstrikes in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The overnight attacks happened in the city of Goma, which is controlled by the M23 militia. Well, those are the headlines. This EWN and more at midday or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
Well, travelling in Kempton Park, we've got delays on the R24 East. This is between Barber Road and Isunder Road. An accident reported. Roadworks are taking place along this route. Please be on the lookout. The accident is on the N3 North right at the Gululis interchange. Delays from Van Buren Road. There's also queuing traffic on the M1 North approaching Marlborough Drive. Please be on the lookout there. More updates at the top of the hour. Stay tuned.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
The Sharing Space
On the Clement Manyathela Show.
702.
It's 25 minutes before 12 o'clock. Time for the Sharing Space. The Sharing Space is what we do every single Wednesday around this time after the news at 11:30, and we share our stories. So anything that happens in your life that you think the 702 lenders may be interested to know about, or maybe stuff that's happened in your life and you need advice around that, you are welcome to send us an email on cm@702.co.za. I've got an email today from Matt. I'm going to read it, and then afterwards we're going to go to your calls. If Matt is asking for advice, be kind enough to please share your advice. If Matt is not asking for advice, but is just sharing what he went through, share your own experiences if this is something you have also experienced. So here we go. Hey guys, my name is Matt. I work for this multinational company based in Joburg North, but I don't want to mention that name. I've been here for about 5 years now at this company. I get along with everyone. I'm friendly with all the people in the office. I've actually built a nice, close community with some of my colleagues here. And I'm proud to say that I have a diverse group of colleagues that I've come to call friends. We hang out together, we play golf together, we do happy hour on Fridays, we hike together on weekends, and I've even met most of their families. But there's a concern that I have about what I've noticed lately. I am the only white person among my black friends. And whenever we hang out or do anything, they tend to use their home languages when speaking. I mean, I do catch easy terms, like greetings and other popular vernacular words or phrases, but mostly I get lost in conversations and it's gotten me feeling a bit left out. How do I address this with my friends? I don't want to come across as ignorant or insensitive about something as important as our languages. But I want to know how I can raise this with care and understanding that the language barrier is now beginning to affect our friendships. Regards, Matt. Okay, this is Matt's conundrum. Are you in a situation similar to this? That's my first question to you. Because I know there are people that, and it may not be along racial lines. I mean, in this case, Matt is white. His colleagues are black, and sometimes Matt says colleagues tend to speak their home languages together, even in conversations that involve him. And that's why he sometimes feels left out, and he doesn't know how to raise that in a sensitive way without sounding ignorant. And I really appreciate how Matt is handling this situation, because if it was somebody else, he would feel entitled to people speaking English, right? And you are not entitled to people speaking English around you. You are not. I think in the workplace, it's different, because if we are in a meeting, in a boardroom, why would we want to speak our home language when there are people in the boardroom or in that meeting who don't understand it and it's a work meeting? If that company is clear in its policies that English is the language of communication and instruction for us as a company, you've got to respect that. Whether you are an advocate for your vernacular languages or not, you can talk your vernac when you get home or with your other colleagues when you are busy warming up food in the kitchen. But in the meeting room, you respect what the company expects you to do. And I don't think Matt is coming with the attitude of, no, they must speak English all the time. I think he's saying, I'm feeling a bit left out and I want to know how to deal with this situation. Do I raise it with them? Or do you say to Matt, maybe Matt, this is an opportunity for you to go learn Sepedi or isiXhosa or Setswana or Chivenda, if that's the language that they speak, so that you are able to interface with them and communicate with them and enjoy the conversation. But I do think that, if you've got friends who don't understand your language and there's a language that all of you can understand, I think it's okay to actually bring in, especially if the friend is part of the conversation. What's the point in having the friend join the chat if we're constantly going to stick to the home languages and we have them left out? Because we know they don't understand, right? But equally so, my advice to you, Matt, is learn a bit of the languages as well. I've said before that anybody who lives in this country and all they can speak is one language, you're doing a disservice to yourself. We live in the most beautifully diverse country with the most beautiful languages. If you can't even do the basic greetings and check-ins in another language other than yours, you're doing a disservice to yourself. So maybe learn, be interested in other people's languages because they've been interested in yours, and maybe not interested, but forced to learn yours. So maybe learn a little bit more about that language that is spoken the most amongst your friends. But in as far as the meeting room is concerned, work, I really think it's unacceptable for you to rock in and start speaking Sepedi in the board meeting when other people don't even understand what you're saying. What are your thoughts? 011-883-0702. WhatsApp's on 072-702-1702. By the way, I must tell you a story. Once, someone came to me and started speaking Afrikaans to me. First of all, why would you assume that I understand Afrikaans? I'm black. So the likelihood is that I understand English than Afrikaans. There are other black people, of course, who can speak Afrikaans, but I found it bizarre that this man, I think I was at a bank, just approached me, started speaking Afrikaans, and I responded Kasepedi. And he was taken aback. And I didn't understand why. Because he came to me, he asked me a question in Afrikaans, and I responded Kasepedi. And he took offense. And I was like, that's weird. You came to me in Afrikaans. That's your home language. I'm responding to you in my home language. And you must be okay with that. Otherwise, then, speak a language that you and I are compromising in and can understand. Is that wrong to even take that approach? Let me know what your advice is for Matt and if you've been in these shoes before. It's 18 before 12.
Bongani Bingwa, 702 Breakfast.
Weekday mornings, 6 to 9.
This is Kabele from Pretoria. About illiteracy and children reading for meaning. In my practice as an optometrist, during an eye test for children, I usually prefer not to use alphabets because of you think the child can't see, only to find out they are in grade 2, but they can't still identify alphabets. Grade 2 and sometimes even grade 3, they can identify alphabets.
Isn't that absolutely frightening? Are you telling me there are children walking around with spectacles who possibly don't need them, but got them because they didn't know how to read? And everybody thought they couldn't see. They can see it perfectly.
You just don't know.
They just can't read it. That is extraordinary.
Bongani Bingwa, 6 to 9.
On 702.
Remember when you had to hurry up and wait, and cars could only run on fossil fuels? Well, hurry up and catch up. You don't need diesel power, you just need a second electric motor. With Volvo plug-in hybrids, you can drive electric in the city, switch to fuel for the long haul, or combine both when you want it all. So what are you waiting for? You're late for your test drive. It's safe to be brave with Volvo.
More than 5,700 cases of cervical cancer are reported in South Africa each year. Sadly, more than 3,000 women in our country die from this disease annually. But there is hope. We have intensified the war against this deadly disease. Over the past few years, more than 3.6 million girls have benefited from the HPV vaccination program that protects them from cervical cancer. We are accelerating this program to ensure that millions more of our young girls are protected from this preventable disease. The success of this campaign depends on collaboration among all stakeholders, especially parents and caregivers who are required to give consent for their daughter to participate in the vaccination program. For more information, visit your nearest healthcare facility. This message is brought to you by the National Department of Health.
For over 30 years, Bid Air Cargo has been keeping South Africa's supply chain moving, giving our economy the dedicated cargo capacity it needs. Whether it's really, really urgent, oversized, or hazardous, when a shipment has to fly, we make it happen. Linking all major airports with reliable freighter services, our promise delivers. Bid Air Cargo. Every kilo counts.
John Perlman. Weekday afternoons,
3 to 6.
Government owns 88,000 buildings, not to mention 5 million hectares of land. So is there a way of solving both the problems? Understand that this isn't just aimed at trying to deal with the money that flows out on unnecessary rentals, but you see an enterprise and job creation opportunity.
So the contradiction exists that we spend 6 billion rand a year on private leases, yet we have government buildings sitting empty. And that's just simply because the state cannot afford.
John Perlman.
3 to 6 on 702.
702 Afternoon Drive with John Perlman is proudly brought to you by Telkom Business. Possible begins here.
The Sharing Space
On the Clement Manyathela Show.
702.
15 minutes before 12.
Well, Clement, this is Kuzo. The first thing you can do is start learning the majority's language. How about that? Because here am I sending a voice note in English and I can speak Afrikaans praat. So
let him start there, saying while I'm learning, can we talk in Afrikaans, but also I need practice, so they will talk in Zulu or Sotho, whatever they're talking.
Yeah, my advice to Matt Clement is as follows. If he really cares about that relationship and his friends, he must start going to extra classes and learning their languages, so that, or at least if he can learn one, if the guys, most of them speak Sesotho, he must just go and learn Sesotho. That will be an effort from his side to show that he values their relationship, instead of him sulking and sitting on the side and feeling neglected. He must acknowledge that he's in Africa. We've got majority of Africans, and the best way to survive is to learn the people's language. That is as simple as that. It cannot be something that we should discuss as if it's a tragedy. It's not a tragedy. He must go and learn the language. Mutsungwa Mpirime.
Good morning, Clement. Yeah, I feel for this guy because I've worked in an environment where even as I'm a black person that speaks mostly English, Afrikaans, and Sepedi, I've been in an environment where you see people that speak isiXhosa, Zulu, and those people don't compromise. They'll be speaking their language, and then you're just sitting there looking around like you don't understand half the things they're saying, and then I just wish people would be more considerate. But if I was this anonymous, I would just tell the colleagues that, you know what, guys, unfortunately, I can't understand most of the time. Can you please be a bit more accommodating? If not, then just distance yourself. That's what I do. I don't hang out with my work colleagues, especially ones that don't want to compromise with their languages. So yeah, I understand. Eddie from Centurion.
Hi, Clement. Yeah, I've experienced that as well. I was once employed by an insurance company which was very Afrikaans. I'd find myself amongst 48 Afrikaners in a conference, and obviously they were speaking Afrikaans. I ended up buying Afrikaans CDs. I actually fell in love with Afrikaans music, and slowly but surely I got into the tune. And today, I'm not fluent, but I speak Afrikaans. Thank you.
Interesting. Please share some Afrikaans albums you've been listening to and the ones that you really caught on to. I'd like to give that a listen. Lionel, you calling from Johannesburg. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. How are you doing, sir?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm fine, Clement. Hey, Clement, I'm in the same boat of you where you are in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a black skin colored guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when I'm traveling to work with a taxi, and the people, they always talk to me in Vernac or Zulu, Xhosa. They think I can speak their language. Now, at my company I'm working at, my first time when I walked in, my first year when I walked in, the guys in the sales, it's a white guy. I spoke to him in Afrikaans, but he couldn't believe that I can speak Afrikaans that well. He asked me, where did you learn Afrikaans? I looked at him, I said to him, I'm a colored guy. I can look black, but I'm a colored guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't believe it. So, and when the guy speak to me in Zulu, and then I respond to him and said, listen, sir, I don't understand what you're saying. Let's speak English where we can understand each other. So it's a bit difficult for me as well.
Yeah, so it does happen. By the way, the guy who approached me in Afrikaans didn't say he thought I am maybe colored. No, it was just, I don't know, he felt like, oh, well, I'm Afrikaans and therefore I'm going to just speak Afrikaans to somebody else and they must respond. And I just felt that's an entitlement. Because then when I respond in my home language, then don't take offense. Otherwise, let's compromise. English is the language of instruction. Let's go with that then.
Clement, you tell me, what incentive is there for any person who does not speak an African language to learn the vernacular? The workplace is English. The language of South Africa is English. What percentage of the population is actually English or English speaking? Very little. So the only way you're going to get the Mlungus And whoever else doesn't want to speak all the African vernaculars is to say, we are now going to do integration. 702, why don't you allow people to call in whatever language they want? Yes, translate it then. But at the same time, it will spur people to start learning the basic vernacs that they speak in Gauteng, which is going to be Zulu and isiXhosa. Otherwise, we are still going to be talking about this in 100 years' time. What about your culture, your identity? Should your kids not be going to school, learning their own language, learning their own cultural history?
Yeah, thank you for the voice note. In fact, on this show, I can speak for the station because I know some of my colleagues, we do take calls. In fact, we encourage people, if you're uncomfortable to speak English, you want to speak in your own language because that's how you're going to best articulate yourself, do so. And I'll take it upon myself to translate because there are also licensing issues here. 702 is not a Sepedi radio station. It's an English medium radio station. That's our license. So my responsibility then is to try translate to the other listeners who may not understand. But on this show, we allow people to call in and express themselves in the best way they think they are articulating themselves best. More of your WhatsApps.
Hi, Clement and team. You know, Matt's question is taking me back to this little question I had in my head yesterday. I think I was listening to Ramaphosa's show. And I was asking myself, do white people and other races that are not African get to be asked these questions at interviews if they can speak any African languages? Because we get to be asked if you can speak Afrikaans. So it sounds like more of the same thing, which means we need to try and meet each other halfway and learn something about each other.
Clement, maybe I'll also remain anonymous, but to Matt, at work, I think I've learned the hard way that at work we've got colleagues, we don't have friends. And with the colleagues, we only focus on the job. Now, if it happened that you managed to develop some friendships with your colleagues, then they will not exclude you if they are friends to you. So they'll make sure that the language they communicate with, you are able to understand it. Yeah, but if that's not the case, then just keep it strictly to work. Matt, no friendship at work.
Hey, Abdul Clement, I won't say my name this time. You know, I will send an email. My name, clearly in my surname, you can see who it is, an African brother. I send it to an Afrikaans lady. She responds in Afrikaans. So every time I speak to her, I have to Google translate. I complain to my boss, but isn't the English a language that we must all use so we can all get along? No, don't worry, you know, these people. But now if I start and write an email in Sepedi, HR hearing, I find it very, very unfair.
Yeah, it's unfair. If you write to me an email in Afrikaans, I'm going to respond in Sepedi. I will. Because you want to speak your home language, which is not the language of communication in the company, then I'll also stick to my home language. We need to fight this level of entitlement sometimes from people who think we must pander around them because this is their language and therefore we must find ways to maneuver that. And I know it gets complicated with other people who work in places where the power dynamics are quite complicated, because if you start reacting like that, then, I mean, someone tweeted me and says, Clement, I once got fired because I responded in Setswana to an email, to a work email that was written in Afrikaans. Why are you writing me an email in Afrikaans when the language of communication, as per the policies of this company, is English?
Hi, Clement. The lady that questioned the incentive of learning African languages is spot on. The sad part is that even children of black people lately don't know their African languages very well because they are incentivized to master English at the expense of their home languages, because that's the language that's going to advance them in the corporate world. So, yeah, we are going to lose our languages in many years to come.
Hello, about the language issue and friends. It's quite a broad situation because my daughter-in-law is Brazilian. She came to live here in South Africa, married to my son, and she's had to learn to speak English. It was very, very difficult for her, but no one here spoke Portuguese, and so that was very difficult. She did also have to learn English so that she could present her research, her scientific research, at conferences, and it just seems that English is a lingua franca, and that many people in different countries have to learn this language in order to participate in dialogues across a lot of different disciplines. But nevertheless, I think it does seem to be a situation where the person needs to perhaps learn one of the other languages in our country.
Agree. Aubrey Masango.
Weekday evenings,
8 to midnight.
50 officials caught facilitating illegal entry and selling visas.
The figure of 50 is an aggregated figure over the past period. In the past year, around 26 gone through the internal processes and ultimately got fired. There is 38 as we speak that is undergoing disciplinary processes. And in this instance, in those areas where there is fraud that has been identified, those ones we actually enlist them also with the Hawks.
Dr. Mike Masiapato, Border Management Authority's Commissioner.
Aubrey Masango.
8 to midnight on 702.
702.
The Vodacom United Rugby Championship is one of the hottest tournaments on the planet. Hollywood Bets adds spice with an epic competition in which 400,000 Rand in cash, prizes and betting vouchers must be won. Prizes include a Vodacom URC VIP experience and a glamorous Table Mountain adventure. To enter, simply bet 30 Rand or more on any Vodacom URC fixture between 23 January and 16 May.
T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counseling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp help to 076 675 0710.
Why argue with your teenage know-it-all when you can feel more in control? Get the Haval H6 from only $6299 per month with intelligent voice command technology that does not backchat. Perfect. Visit gwm.co.za for T's and C's and to book a test drive. GWM, go with more. Brought to you by GWM Finance, a division of Westbank, an authorized financial services and registered credit provider.
Coming up
on the Midday Report
with Mandy Wiener.
What's up, Mandy?
Hey, Clement.
What's popping?
So, Bellarmine Mugabe has dropped his bail application. It looks like there's a bit of a concession that he's in the country illegally. They're looking at a plea deal now.
What did you just say?
Well, I mean, we need to clarify this exactly, but he's going to be seeking out a plea deal. Okay. So we'll...
This country. Okay, interesting.
And then we're going to look at the story about the 5 people that are appearing in court for this family murder Stokvel, is what I like to describe it as.
Yeah,
where
it's so wild.
So wild, the story. I'm just laughing because it's like from one crazy story to the next.
Yeah.
Well, these people appearing in court, it's a police officer, school principal, all relatives, carrying out at least 9 murders and claiming life policies. The police making those arrests yesterday. Eskom turns to a public process on its plans to cut power because of municipal debt. We'll get a response from Salga on that too. And then we'll explain why the sulfur smell in Joburg is so bad today.
All right. That's what's coming up on the Midday Report with Mandy Wiener. We're back tomorrow between 9 and 12. Have a beautiful day, my friends. Bye-bye.
This is EWN.
Good afternoon. I'm Bali Dlamini. Lawyers for Bellarmine Mugabe are exploring possible plea